So if those of you who missed it, Michael and Neil are both attending the select board meeting, at least at the beginning. And so I'm going to temporarily run the meeting. And I hereby open the meeting at 7:17. And thanks to the governor and the exemption of, or the extension of the emergency ruling, we can continue to hold this meeting remotely. Does anybody have any changes they want to make to the agenda under the 48-hour rule? Hearing none. Okay, I do have a very, very short poem. It's called "Oh Waters," and it's written by Gary Snyder. And once again, I'm tapping the reading that I did decades ago. I guess that's when I did my best reading. Anyway, Gary Snyder is a poet and a Buddhist. And here is "Oh Waters." Oh waters, wash us, wash me, under the wrinkled granite straight up slabs. And sitting by camp in the pine shade, Nano is sleeping. Mountains humming and crumbling, snowfields melting. Soil building on tiny ledges, for wild onions and the flowers. Blue polemonium. Great earth Sangha. That's it. Sangha means a community of Buddhists. He writes beautiful poems. I highly recommend him. Okay. How do people feel about starting discussion with SFTA before 7:30? Or should we try to cover one of the other discussions? Kelly, are you expecting anybody else?
Seth Malloy, but he might not come in until 7:30.
Okay.
I think I can, unless there are substantial problems, I think I can answer any questions.
Why don't we give him a little time? And actually, most of the discussion items are things that Neil was going to cover.
If I can quickly jump in with just a little something.
Sure.
I did receive feedback from someone today about the mailing that the Conservation Commission did, that educational mailing that we did.
Yep.
And it was positive feedback. And they just were really glad to see it. They said they were really glad to see it, and they just found it to be helpful in knowing what the, what steps or what process they would maybe need to take if they were looking at doing something. They caught me while I was at the post office. So it was just sort of a spur of the moment thing. But it was good feedback. I mean, it was positive.
That's good. It's actually not on the agenda, but
oh, sorry.
That's good. It's good to hear.
I was with Rick Antel today, and he was very impressed with it. He was very glad that the commission did that mailing.
That's good. Boy, he's really kind of disappeared.
Yes.
Okay. I could talk about, and Kelly, you'd be interested in this. I could talk about the presentation options that we've been given by Conservation Works. Conservation Works is the name of the company that's doing our inventories. And Lori and I have discussed a couple of possible options for a fall presentation. So I could just talk about them preliminarily and talk about them again later on if we want to. But first we were saying, our first discussion about presentation options was in February before people, or March, before people were really getting vaccinated. And what we discussed then was that Conservation Works would make a presentation in the fall, a Zoom presentation that encompassed all 4 parcels that they have inventoried, and that it would be followed up the next day or whenever afterward with a bag lunch, maybe the same day, with a bag lunch for people who wanted to do a walk of one of those parcels. And I still like that plan. Now Lori is saying, since people are vaccinated, maybe we should do multiple walks to all the 4 parcels, but we haven't hammered out any of the details of how that would be done. So maybe when I get more details from her, unless anybody has any kind of feedback now for that.
I
we can
think
talk-
that sounds really good.
which does.
Well, I do like the idea of having some kind of Zoom so people can be involved and kind of get an overview of everything. But it's also really great to bring people on site. So if there's a combination of those things we could do, I think that would be grand.
Yeah, I agree.
I think orchestrating multiple trips to multiple parcels is maybe not a job I'm ready to tackle.
Yeah.
Also, the thing about the Zoom, doing the Zoom thing at any point is it's a great way to display all the fantastic photography that they've done.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, do you have anything to add to that?
No, you mentioned that possibility, that approach earlier, as you said, and I was enthused then, I am now. I think either Bailey or Leland would be terrific for a walk, and they both have enough parking. So I would want them to flesh it out a little bit, but I think it's a terrific approach.
Hidden Meadow also has good parking, and very few people know about Hidden Meadow. So,
A very individualistic take. I think it's less interesting than.
Not if you're an ecologist. The plant diversity there is pretty spectacular. All right, well, we'll take that up again.
Well, I like the idea of doing the presentation by Zoom, because I think Zoom can really lend itself well to not only the presentation and presenting all 4 properties, and like you said, Jean, the pictures, maps, all of that kind of thing. But I, just to echo what everyone else, has said, and that I think picking one property to go to, I would not try to do all 4.
Oh, yeah.
I think the one property is the best approach.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Spending a good amount of time there.
Right.
And we talked about doing this in early October because we would probably have good color and it wouldn't be stifling hot and or freezing cold.
Yeah, that's a great time of year.
So we'll continue this discussion. What time have we got now, folks? 7:20.
7:25.
Kelly, do you want to proceed or do you want to wait for Seth?
Seth and I have been in considerable conversation. I think we know what each one thinks. We are each, I sent you an email yesterday, I believe, outlining our understanding from the last meeting.
Right.
That the commission was receptive to this so-called tiered approach, which we certainly are too. The only differences that I can see between the RDA process and the notice to construct process under section 14, there are 3. One is the fee, which is a moot point. The second is notice to the state, which really isn't that big an issue. And the third is the complexity of the forms. And the RDA forms from the state are more detailed and a little bit more to fill out than would be under section 14. So really, either one or another similar approach would be fine with us. We prefer the section 14 just because it's a little bit simpler.
Okay, I've been remiss, I think. I should have introduced Matt Byrne. because I was just going to explain to him what we're talking about in case he's interested. But Matt Byrne is is a senior ecologist and a wetlands scientist with BSC Group, and he will be our consultant, independent consultant for review of the notice of intent for Coolidge Crossing. And Matt, what we're talking about is we have a general order of conditions for trail maintenance, and SFTA, the Forest and Trails Association, which does a lot of work on public property, is asking to modify that order of conditions. So I see that Seth is here. I have a number of comments, and I apologize that I wasn't on top of my game at the last discussion, but my daughter was here from Colorado, and that was kind of dominating my time. I wanted to say that regarding what we voted to approve the last time, we voted to move 2 of the routine trail maintenance items from 14 into 13 so that they would require no advance notification. About proceeding with that, I would request that SFTA pause for just 2 weeks in implementing that at all, because I took a close look at the best management practices in the order, and I really feel like they need a lot of work. And I am promising that I will work on that and bring that discussion to the next meeting so that we can solidify them and vote on them so that they're more clear. So if I could just ask SFTA to pause on moving ahead with the change that's been implemented so far until that point. And please participate in the discussion at the next meeting if you can.
Seth,
Pardon?
I'm wondering if Seth is with us.
Well, I
I am.
see
Can you
him
hear me?
there.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, not loud.
Not loud?
I can hear you clear.
Okay.
Kelly, did you want to comment on what I just suggested?
The order of conditions itself has some practices in an appendix.
Right.
And I think rather than amending the order of conditions every time the commission wants to adjust best management practices, that it go by the route that we discussed at the last meeting, which is that would be independent of the order of conditions. And you just make changes in the best management practices in consultation with whomever you want over time. I'm not even sure, I mean, you can certainly vote on it, but I'm not sure that BMPs for this kind of work need to be in a regulation.
I'm not proposing that they're in a regulation. They are embodied in the order, and so they're embodied in the order, and then there's an appendix to the order, and there's contradiction in those 2 places. So I'm just talking about, since we still have amending the order on the table, I'm talking about cleaning that language up while we still have an open question of amending the order in front of us. And I promise I'll work on it before the next meeting, asking that you pause for 2 weeks.
I think it's fine. Seth, do you know of any, I think they were planning, Rafe was planning on waiting for something like a month before going out on any major.
Yeah, the only thing I know about is there was some a significant downed tree in Rocky Narrows someplace. So I can see if that's near any wet areas. And ask him to hold off.
Anybody else have any comment about my suggestion?
I don't know, it seems reasonable.
Yeah, I think it seems reasonable. And I mean, now, like you're saying, now is the time to clean it up. you know, it's kind of outstanding and contradictory.
In the spirit of our agreement last time, was really that we would establish kind of an ongoing relationship so that we could improve that way too. Not
Yeah.
expecting to get it perfect in the beginning.
Right, and we're looking forward to establishing that and seeing, you know, what sort of shape that takes.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to move on talking about the rest of the proposal that you put before us, unless anybody has any further comment on what we voted to accept at the last discussion. So just to reiterate, and correct me if I've made any errors in this, Kelly, SFTA is asking that we take two activities of constructing bridges or boardwalks or things of that nature, and also relocating trails, or I'm assuming it also means creating new trails, that we take them off the list of things that are not allowed without notice to perform work, and put them into 14 to allow them to be permitted with submittal of a notice to perform work. Do I have that right?
Yes, just one clarification of the trail part, which is that I don't anticipate any new trails. The relocation part, both the Perry Street Bridge, Horsebrook Bridge last year, involved a trail relocation so that the bridges could be at an optimal location. And the Bailey Trail Bridge, the worst location, the lowest one, likewise, we're thinking that it would be a much better location for a bridge if it was just moved a couple of yards upstream where it's narrower and has higher banks. That's the kind of relocation that we're thinking of with the second part of the proposal.
Right. The motivation is to make it easier to make the trails better, you know, preserve the wetlands better, destroy the forest less, just to make it easier. Not new trails is a new trail. Yeah, we can do the regular process for that. That's different.
Well, I personally feel like the modification to the order regarding relocation of trails is poses a greater concern for me than creating bridges. But well, so my thoughts about this proposal in its entirety, the two things that you want to move into 14. I think I've expressed this before, and it's not going to be a surprise to you. I'm very uncomfortable with doing this because I have two main reasons for that. I feel like we are giving an exemption to Forest and Trails, who, don't get me wrong, we are immensely appreciative of the work that you do, but giving them an exemption, first of all, I'm not really sure we have the power to give. I question whether or not it keeps us in, if we are actually administering the Wetlands Protection Act correctly if we do this. But at a more local level, it troubles me because I feel like we have the expectations that private landowners will have to file an application to create a bridge, to create a boardwalk. So I don't feel like that it would be even-handed. And my other big objection is that I don't feel confident that Forest and Trails really knows how to identify where wetlands are and where buffer zones are. And the reason I feel that way is because of the presentation that you made, Seth, at the last discussion. I could be wrong about it, but it seemed like a lot of the photographs that you offered as examples where people were haphazardly creating bridges and putting logs down and stuff like that. The photographs to me looked like, in many cases, that it was just a low point in a trail where water had accumulated and not necessarily a wetland. So all this leads around to me saying, I think an agent, a qualified agent who knows how to identify a wetland, we need his or her input on all of these proposed bridges or boardwalks. And if she determines that where you want to put down something that makes a crossing better, neater, helps people avoid mud, and she determines that it's not a wetland, then you don't even have to file anything. But so those are my objections, and I'll just open it up for discussion.
Jean, can I respond? Just first, the DEP seems to think it is legal because they approved it for Weston and Essex County. He approved it even in a more extreme form for Weston because it's without prior approval. And in terms of needing the input of an agent, I think you've got it. Whether it's through Section 14 or through an RDA, walking through the process, we work up a sketch, a plan, a proposal, and bring it to the commission. And the commission, through the agent or through a site visit on the part of the entire commission, goes and checks it out, discusses it, says, we need some revisions. And then you either say, fine, go ahead, or come back to us with an NOI because it's too big. And I don't see how you lose any of that through Section 14.
Well, my first response is I want to remind you that what was just mentioned briefly at the last discussion before we had to conclude because we were running out of time was, the way the discussion was going was that the commission was contemplating not having a bridge be an automatic notice of intent, but contemplating, perhaps permissible with an RDA. So that was going to be the next piece of what I had to say. But I'm actually waiting for comments from other people on the commission regarding how they feel about the proposal in general.
Yeah.
If we didn't, purchase a major vehicle or something.
I don't know.
This is Michael. This is Michael just listening in. If I could speak for 2 seconds. I don't know if people looked at it or read in my comments, but I feel like that we do have the option to either go to an RDA or an NOI with the changes that, at least what I put in my email about including them as items 2 and 3, and it's subject to, if it's truly subject to Section 415. I don't necessarily see the need to make it an RDA or an NOI up front, as opposed to the fact that we'll always have that option. I might have missed a lot of previous discussion, but I just tuned in a minute ago to just say that I feel like it does give us, at least the way I put it in my email, and assuming that it's 15 holds, that we will always have the option to push it to an RDA or an NOI, because we would have to approve it before, assuming we have to approve it before it even just goes forward at all, which is the other edit I suggested for Section 15.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your comments, but so go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, okay.
I'm just kind of confused because I feel like everybody's getting at this same thing that, we all want to see it and have a look at it and have an agent go over it and decide, how much more input is needed. So I'm not sure why we go outside of the normal process. If we're already agreeing that like maybe a lot of these can be handled via RDA, or some of them would even be AAs because they're not in jurisdiction. I don't really understand the whole, moving it to something that's not requiring pre-approval. I guess I'm having trouble seeing what we're going for at this point, because it seems like a lot of it seems like I agree with Jean that I don't like the idea of kind of singling this out as something for a special process that's different than other projects in town. But I can certainly see how some of these projects will probably be pretty minor and reasonable in scope that could be handled with like an RDA or something like that.
There were two other comments I wanted to make and they slipped my mind. Regarding Weston, I meant to speak to people in Weston about DEP's input on this, but from what I recall from their documents that you sent us, Seth, it sounded like they had a dedicated group of people, and they also had access to somebody who was in their organization who knew how to identify wetlands, which would be a tremendous advantage.
Their organization is very similar to ours in size and scope. And we also have, Art Schnorr he was a chairman on the commission in the past and definitely knows how to help us to identify wetlands.
Yes, but he wasn't the agent. The agent has technical skills for that purpose.
Yeah, he said when he was the chairman, they didn't have an agent. The board used to do it.
Right.
So he did kind of gather those skills. But I think we're missing something here.
Can I just make my second point and then you can go ahead? The other thing I wanted to say is that based on how we wrapped up the last discussion about sort of heading in the direction of RDAs, instead of just assuming automatically it's an NOI, first of all, I agree an NOI is a bigger deal, a little bit more costly, a butter notification. The RDA does not require butter notification, and it just has a notice in the newspaper. And I've been looking into, although I'm not at a point right now that I can offer any conclusion, but I've been looking into speaking to other agents in other towns, asking the question, do you ever practice approving multiple projects in jurisdictional area in different locations at one time? So I'm asking, would it be feasible to approve multiple bridges with one RDA? And the preliminary answers I'm getting back is yes, people do this. So I'm bringing this up because it's not because I'm just dead set against making anything go more smoothly for SFTAA. On the contrary, I do want to facilitate your work, but I believe if we could dig deeper into the possibility of a filing of an RDA for multiple bridges, simple, small bridges or boardwalks, that would be potentially something that would also, ease your pain, so to speak.
Yeah, I think we should be open to that, and that's really the goal. But I just want to highlight kind of I feel like there's an air that the goal of this is to release shackles from a group to do what they want. But that's not really our goal. It's not my goal. The goal is that there are things that we could do to improve trails to protect wetlands better. And the majority of the pictures that I had, I can't say for certain all of them, but the majority of them, were in wetlands. One of them I specifically included, had skunk cabbage there next to the trail. Another one is in Bailey that's right near that whole big swampy area. Another one is right near it's on the schoolhouse trails. It's a wetlands, even on the GIS map, it's wetlands. And it's the kind of little tributaries that are going into that with skunk cabbage all around it. So, you know, in all these kind of instances, our goal is, hey, you know, we could actually make this a lot better. We would really like to. But then when it comes down to it, you know, it's like a handful of people with 100 miles of trail, we're just not going to do it because we have lives. And so the goal is there a way just to make it so that, is there a way to unblock? Because, you know, we have this whole list of stuff we want to do. And, you know, we talk about it all the time, and we really want to do these things, but it just comes up, well, you know, no, we're not going to do that because who has the time and energy to, you know, file for it. So it's not that we don't want to, it's just that you know, we might even put it on the list that we're going to, but then we never do, because it's just, there's a bar that's a little bit too high. But, you know, we want to make these trails better. We don't like walking through the mud. We don't like seeing people in large trails and, you know, further go into, you know, wetlands that definitely have skunk cabbage and things in them. So that's really our goal. It's not to, I just feel like there's a kind of this air that we're trying to get away with something that's really not our goal at all. It's how can we just, how can things be a little bit easier? And I think, you know, Gene, maybe that is a good, you know, middle ground, if kind of figuring out a way to group things and do an RDA is more, you know, easier for the commission to at least start with. You know, we could, maybe that's a middle ground. It will still be easier for, maybe it will enable us to do a few more and still have you be comfortable.
I don't see that, just one quick, I'm sorry, Neil, one quick comment. I don't see that there's vast difference between filling out the notice to perform work form and filling out an RDA.
That's what I said.
That's where I'm also at. You know, I hear that you want to, you know, get some of the barriers out of the way, but I don't see the difference between those two processes. I mean, if you still have to fill out a piece of paper and answer questions from the commission, is that really going to change the barrier? I'm not sure I get it.
Can I, sorry, I came into this conversation.
Also, Neil, I hate to cut you off, but Cindy has had her hand up forever.
You're muted, Cindy.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, Neil, and then I'll go right after you? And
Well,
thank you for recognizing me, Courtney.
Sorry, I didn't see you there. The only reason I was just going to back up half a step, having come in partway through the movie and have everybody explain to me what happened before I showed up. But maybe briefly. But if Cindy, if you have a specific question, why don't you do yours first?
So I do not have a specific question. We were sharing our perspective on this, and and this is my perspective. I can appreciate that SFTA wants to move the process along and, you know, kind of get right to the work, and I understand that and I get that. This hinges a little bit on what Courtney was saying earlier. I'm a little bit, I guess where my concern is creating a special process for one group in town to use. I would hate to set a precedent for, you know, creating these separate processes depending on who the player is or who the group is or what have you. So I actually like Jean's suggestion to do maybe an RDA, which again, like I would dovetail with Courtney and say, what's the true difference between like an RDA that will cover several bridges at once and you know, and the work order that they would have, you know, that work form, the trail work maintenance form that they would have filled out. So they seem kind of equal to me. Maybe it's not, and I'd like to hear the feedback from SFTA if they feel it's not equal or if it's burdensome. I'm open to hearing that. Anyway, that's it in a nutshell for me.
Okay. So if you don't mind me backing everybody up just a half a step, can we just sort of discuss where we are? It sounds like we've talked about maybe using an RDA process and maybe SFTA is asking for something a little bit lighter weight than that. Can somebody just recap it for me for like 20 seconds?
Yeah, so we're They made a two-part proposal the last time we met with them, and we didn't finish discussing part two. And part two is their request to take the activities of creating a bridge or a boardwalk and also relocating trails to take them out of the portion of the order of conditions that says that, you know, this requires further review, and putting them into section 14, which would only require a notice to complete, to perform work form. And I opened up the discussion because I was running the meeting and I presented my objections to going that route. And then I offered a suggestion that I have been discussing with agents in other towns that we could potentially approve multiple bridges with one RDA, bridges at different locations, because it is being done elsewhere.
And would the RDA process, now obviously the RDA process, you know, there's a question as to whether it would impact wetlands or not. Like usually anything in a resource area itself would come in under an NOI. Are we talking about potentially, if it's a sort of a kind of low impact bridge that is a clear improvement, are we talking about allowing that to come in under an RDA process?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, and is SFTA's position that they don't want to use that kind of modified process?
No,
And
we're perfectly happy with an RDA process. The OOC process, section 13, is somewhat smoother. It's a shorter form. There's no state notification, no publication. The commission and the agent still has exactly the same review and comment powers. But if the commission is more comfortable with the RDA approach, we're very happy to live with that. And we've actually talked about the concept of covering multiple, probably simple bog bridges. There are 2 or 3 places in Leland, for instance, where very short, simple bog bridges are needed. And we could do all 3 of those at one file.
okay. So, I mean, I've heard, at least since I jumped in, that I've heard enough commissioners talking about being more comfortable. So Courtney and Cindy, I've heard your comments, and Jean, I just heard yours. Are you more comfortable with, would you be comfortable with kind of making this modification to allow bridges and multiple bridges to come in under an RDA?
Can I throw in a comment? I
course.
think it's doable. Before we assume that we can do it, I'd like to do more homework, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, how to do it correctly.
And I think this has been on our topic list for a very long time about RDA versus NOI, and where there's certain things that, you know, fall into which categories. So you know, some of the things you mentioned, Neil, about, you know, it's low impact or it's an improvement on the existing, like, I think those are guidelines that, you know, the commission can have, and you know, that could be applied to, you know, a bog bridge, you know, wherever, you know, it doesn't have to be a specific process that's only available to SFTA.
I mean, I think that's a good point. And Cindy was kind of making a similar one, which is we don't want to make sort of, I would say 2 things. One is we don't want to create just an exemption for an organization. Anybody who meets the criteria that we lay out as being something that's approvable under this kind of thing we would want. That being said, I also do think that if there are certain organizations that we partner with in town that we kind of have a baked in or a long running experience that they're expert at what they do, and we know the quality of the work, and we don't have as many questions to ask, I don't see any particular impediment to kind of letting them do things in a more expeditious fashion, although I agree with the RDA process, but in a more expeditious fashion than we might with somebody who just comes to us, you know, out of the blue that we don't know.
2 comments about RDAs for Seth's benefit, in case he doesn't know this. when you get a determination, it's good for 3 years. And I forgot the other point I was going to make. Oh, okay. I'll let you know if it comes to me.
So in the interest of time, if Jean, you want a little bit more time to just sort of work out how such a process might work, are we okay with tabling it for now? And, you know, I don't know that we'd put it on our next agenda, but we might put it on unless there's room for it, but take it
Well,
up in the future.
I don't know how other people feel. I'm prepared to say that I would rather we did not consider the request to move bridges and relocation of trails into section 14.
If we're going with an RDA approach, it does not require a vote of the commission because that's the regulations already.
Right. But I think the original question we were asked to give you an answer on was, should we move it in the order and make that change? And it sounds like in general, we're thinking of, no, this is going to go through a different process. So I think we just need to decide as a commission now what Jean is saying. Like, do we need to just vote to say, no, we're not going to change the order or not going to support that?
Probably, it can't hurt. So if somebody wants to, I'd entertain a motion.
Words fail me.
Well, I guess I could move to approve the request, and then I would vote no.
Well,
So
why don't we move to deny the request? I move that we deny the request to move it into to the roof trail relocation and bridge building into section 14.
second,
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Jean,
aye.
Neil, aye, Cindy,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
and I'm looking through here. Carol,
Aye.
Michael, are you there? Maybe he's in the
I
meeting.
wouldn't count on him.
Okay, all right, the motion carries. So Seth and Kelly, we happy to work with you on trying to make this a little bit smoother process and a little bit more expeditious. So I think, Jean, the next step is you're gonna sort of do some homework and we'll reach back out to you folks and when we're ready to talk about it some more.
Yes, and I promise I will have best management practices to recommend by the next meeting.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to step away for 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Should probably I'll just go through and open it and Jean will be back shortly.
Yeah,
So.
by the time you read all the mumbo jumbo.
Exactly, before I do the boilerplate language, okay. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission in the town of Sherburne is holding a virtual public hearing at Sherburne Town Hall, 19 Washington Street, Sherburne, Mass. at 8 p.m. on the 15th day of July, 2021. The hearing will be held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetland Protection Act, and the Sherburne Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 17, to consider a proposal by Civil Design Group LLC on behalf of Baystone Sherburne LLC to construct 120 multifamily rental units at 84 and 86 Coolidge Street, map 5 and lot 54 and 55. Work is proposed within the buffer zone. The application is available for viewing at the Sherburne Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given an opportunity to speak at this hearing. All right, well, welcome everybody. Welcome
Neil,
back, I should say. Welcome back.
Neil, you weren't here at the beginning when I introduced Matt Byrne, who's doing independent consulting for us, senior ecologist and wetland scientist from BSC.
Great. Hi, Matt. Thank you for
Hi.
coming.
My pleasure to be here.
All right. I guess, it probably makes some sense for the applicants to go ahead and present the project. I know that obviously you've been through the process with the ZBA and we had some feedback there. And so your project may have changed some. So it probably makes some sense for you to, start fresh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Todd McDowell from Based on Development. Thank you for having us this evening. With me, I have Stephanie Kiefer, who is our counsel, and Matt Leidner from Civil Design Group, and Desheng Wang from Creative Land and Water Engineering. We do have a little presentation. We're going to kind of go over the plan and then some of the changes that were made through the ZBA process and many changes that were requested by the Conservation Commission. I'm going to hand it over to Matt and let him take you through the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, members of the commission and members of the public. Matt Leidner with Civil Design Group. So we do realize this is sort of, restarting a process over. So I will be repeating, basically everything that I did the first time. We just want to be comprehensive and make sure there could be new people on tonight or whatnot. So, at the risk of being repetitive, just bear with me here. I'll try to be efficient as well and mindful of everyone's time. So just to check, people can see my screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the proposal before the commission here is for 120 units of rental residential product contained in 3 buildings. So buildings 1, 2, 3 on the plan here. And along with that, a clubhouse area up in the front. So just to get everybody acquainted here, this is Coolidge Street that runs along the bottom of the page here. And north is to the left on this plan. So everything is on the east side of Coolidge Street, this project site. And so 120 units, a clubhouse area as well, outdoor amenity space. And some of the parking will be covered in garage areas. That's these brown areas here dotted throughout the site. The site will be accessed, the primary access from Coolidge Street right here. This is a full access proposed driveway with a secondary access connection to an abutting project, which is not yet before this commission, but will be probably in the somewhat near future, an abutting residential age-restricted townhome project. So there'll be a connection, a gated connection out to that project for emergency access as well. So this is just a colored version of the site plan that was included in the plan set submitted with the notice of intent. And I have the uncolored version if we need to refer to that as well in the presentation tonight. But the wetlands are shown as these blue outlines. So here, little pocket up here, and then also on the north side of the development here. So as you can see, there's wetlands on both sides of the development, here and here. And we took those into account with the site layout, of course, and other things that we took into account with the development program, in addition to wetland and buffer areas, were the topography of the land. So in the plan set, there's a grading plan that shows the topography. So we tried to work as best as we could in harmony with that as well. And then also what came into play quite a bit with this design were the soils. So the infiltration capacity of the soils in different areas of the site that we're proposing to infiltrate stormwater, as well as the depth to groundwater, particularly seasonal high groundwater and ledge. And so all those factors came into play among other items like zoning issues, architectural matters, and such to shape the project as it is before you tonight. And so some of the highlights of the development that I'll go through, and happy to answer any questions, go into more detail about any of these, but for 120 units, the development envelope is actually quite compact. with this type of development, low-rise buildings. So this zone would otherwise, this zoning district would otherwise require 1 acre lots. So on this 15 or so acre site, and not utilizing all of it by any means, we're able to achieve 120 units. So it's a very compact development when you think of it in terms of the number of units that we're able to achieve here. And the development envelope, we were able to achieve a sort of a width to it, particularly between the two wetlands that flank the site here, at a point where we, at the pinch point here, we were able to achieve a building depth, the requisite parking, and then, you know, a small, very small, actually, yard area, and able to actually work within that sort of development, or the constraints of the site within that pinch point. So, you know, we think we did we were creative in getting the development to fit within the constraints of the site. We worked with the harmony of the land. In terms of some of the other highlights, the vast majority of the proposed disturbance for this development is in the outer 50 feet of the, when we think of in terms of the buffer zone impacts relative to wetlands, the vast majority of disturbance is in the outer 50 to 100 feet of the buffer zone. We are proposing, as I think everyone's aware by this point, some of our limited work within the 0 to 50 foot inner buffer zone. However, we were able to keep all impervious area to that outer 50 feet of buffer zone. So there's no impervious area, parking or building rooftop or any impervious area within the inner 50 foot of the 100-foot buffer zone. The parking that we have proposed on this site, it's a 1.67 parking ratio, meaning on average 1.67 parking spaces per unit. It's sufficient, but it's not excessively parked. So we tried to look for ways to keep, again, the footprint and the expanse of the development to a minimum, you know, for 120 units, and but also you know, keep the impervious area as low as reasonably possible to support this development. So just the number of parking spaces, not excessively or overly parking this, does keep the impervious area down. We have submitted with the notice of intent a comprehensive stormwater report, and if upon your review of that, I think you will see that we took a very close look and detailed look at the stormwater management proposed for this development. We studied several points of discharge around this site, and we feel that we have very much replicated and reasonably, I should say, reasonably maintained the existing drainage characteristics of the site. So never does it end up exactly the same as existing, but we are very close to existing in terms of rate and volume, and where we're sending the water in the proposed condition versus where it goes today in the existing condition. So you know, I look forward to any questions on that, but we did take a very close look at that. And that actually is one of the aspects that was peer reviewed when this project was before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit submission. And the ZBA hired Tetra Tech as their peer reviewer to look at the project, and one of the items that they were retained to focus on and review was the stormwater management and its compliance with the applicable stormwater management standards. So There was a lengthy review process, some back and forth in terms of comments and responses and updates to the plan based on that process. And also during the peer review process with the Zoning Board of Appeals comprehensive permit that we were requesting through them, the ZBA ended up expanding the scope of Tetra Tech's peer review beyond stormwater, and also including a review by them of the potential wetland and buffer zone impacts of the project as well. So we went through a comment and response period relative to wetlands and buffer zone matters with Tetra Tech through the ZBA process as well. So that process, ZBA process and its associated peer review did lead to some updates, several updates actually, and in our opinion, improvements to the plan. And those updates and improvements are reflected in this plan set that is before this commission now. So those items have been incorporated into the plans and are part of this NOI application. So just to kind of recap some of those changes, because I know not everybody was part of that ZBA process or listened to that. So we were able to adjust our grading and our limit of work and actually pull it farther out of, not entirely out of, but farther away from the wetlands to reduce the area of disturbance within the buffer zones. And through that process with ZBA, we were able to reduce the buffer zone impacts by a little over 5,000 square feet by changing grading and adjusting areas here and there to pull away from that wetland line. We also introduced a buffer zone mitigation planting plan as part of that process. And that's that's included in and incorporated into the landscaping plan submission that was part of this NOI submission. And Hawk Design did that landscape submission. So the mitigation area, planting areas are included in that. And we're happy to work with the commission on sort of the allocation of some of the plantings in those areas and whatnot, but that is included on those plans, both the areas and the number of species and the breakdown of species types within those areas. Another change that we made during the ZBA process relative to their review and the peer reviews that occurred during that process was the parking spaces that were not along a proposed sidewalk, so opposite the buildings, if you will. We reduced those. The ZBA had a desire to have us reduce those from 20 feet in length, which is what is required by the town of Sherborn, by the zoning bylaws, down to 18 feet. So we were able to trim 2 feet off the length of the parking spaces, basically along the entire length of the project on the one side. So that in itself reduced the impervious. It also allowed us to pull that limit of work in and away from the wetlands somewhat, which helped us achieve that 5,000 or so, a little over 5,000 square feet reduction in limit of work in the buffer zone. We also included and incorporated, I should say, wildlife crossings for small wildlife into the project. So Tetra Tech had identified in their review that they were of the opinion that larger wildlife would be able to get through between the wetland areas on each side of the project without an issue, but the smaller wildlife they had a concern about. So working with Tetra Tech and the ZBA, we identified the areas between the buildings. So between building 1 and 2, this area here, And then between 2 and 3, this area here as the areas that would make the most sense, most logical areas for these passageways. And so we incorporated these tunnels, if you will, and the details on the plan set that's been submitted, but they give the ability for smaller wildlife to be able to get between the two wetland areas without having to go over any of the paved area of the site. And lastly, the lighting plan that was submitted to ZBA was commented on during the wetlands review by their peer reviewer. And they had asked us if we could consider doing dimmers and motion sensors on any of the lights that cast their light into the inner 50-foot buffers of 0 to 50 feet. And that's something that Based On was had no problem incorporating, and that has been incorporated into the plans as well. So any of the lights, and I believe there are 5 of them total on the project that cast their light into that inner 50 feet, those have now been proposed to be equipped with motion sensors and dimmers. So we feel like we considered the various constraints of the site, including wetlands and buffer zones in the initial design. And during that ZBA process, from the comments we received from ZBA and from their peer reviewer and others, this commission commented during that process as well. We think we made some great improvements to the plan, and that's what's before you tonight as part of this notice of intent. We're happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to go into more detail about any of the items I mentioned in my summary. And with that, I'll turn it over to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of quick questions and just sort of one thing I wanted to set in motion. My first question is, I couldn't find anywhere in the plans discussion of drinking water and wastewater. And I know there's been talk of the fact that that would be municipal supply of water, maybe from Framingham, and wastewater going to Natick. Has any of that stuff been finalized, or what's the status of that at this point?
Mr. Chairman, if you will, I can talk to that. So we've been working with Pulte, who would be doing the age restricted. That's going to be coming proposed in front of the planning board pretty shortly, I believe. And we've been working with the city of Framingham. We've gotten an agreement in principle with them. It's making good progress. I think we go before the city council in a week or two for their vote. With the sewer, the Natick is well, all the terms have been agreed upon and is working its way through the process there as well. And because we are working with DEP through the MEPA process, Matt, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, as you probably know more about it than I do. And that seems to be progressing along as well.
Right. So this process also involves a MEPA review. And so this project that you're looking at right here, as well as this adjacent project, which will be by Pulte Homes, which at some point will be in front of this commission as well. And as Todd said, in front of the planning board fairly soon. They're both subject collectively to MEPA. And the reason for that is the proposal is they consider it an interbasin transfer of water. So by getting water, drinking water that is, from the city of Framingham, they're an MWRA community. So that water is being supplied from MWRA, which means it's coming from Western Massachusetts. And it would therefore be supplied to this project, and then with the sewer proposed from this project to discharge to the town of Framingham sewer system, they're an MWRA sewer system. So that sewer then gets transferred back into MWRA. So that process of transferring the water from city of Framingham to town of Natick as wastewater is considered by the state and the MEPA process as an interbasin transfer, and therefore puts this project in the jurisdiction of MEPA. And so I guess I hope that answers your question. So the framework is in place. The project is proceeding with MEPA under the proposal here, which is municipal water and sewer from those municipalities. And that's what's reflected in this plan set. So on this plan, you will not see any drinking water wells, nor will you see any wastewater treatment or disposal system. It's all proposed to be municipal on this plan.
And
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's also conditioned in our comprehensive permit to be such as well.
So it's conditioned that it has to have municipal water from somewhere and wastewater going somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my question then is, so if we condition this project and approve it, obviously if one or the other of those elements falls through, are you back before us with a project modification? Are you back before the ZBA?
I do not know the answer to that. I know we would certainly be back before the ZBA. For the Conservation Commission, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, because I think at some level because right now the way it would work is you've got water coming from Framingham and going to Natick, and there's no infiltration at all, so we don't have to worry about hydrological changes to the wetlands that are on site. So I would think that if we're going to infiltrate it to the ground there or pull water out of the ground there, that's something we're gonna need to be concerned with, given the wetland and potential wetland impact. So it's just something to keep in mind. The other thing I just wanted to sort of set in motion, like I said, is, Mr. Byrne is here representing as an outside consultant for the Conservation Commission. And so Matt, I would just encourage you that as you have questions, as you come up to speed on the project, by all means, just jump in and get the information you need to help us, better understand the project and potentially condition it.
Sure, thanks.
Okay. Other people on the commission or Matt, do you have questions at the moment?
If I could just make one administrative point, not pointing a finger, but I wanted to bring up that a couple of emails were sent to, I guess, Baystone in the last 2 weeks from either myself or Elizabeth Larissy, who was our administrative assistant. And in case there's any confusion, I'm acting in a volunteer capacity sort of as administrative support. So if you see something from me, I hope to hear back from you. We didn't get back responses. And Elizabeth is our administrative assistant. So
My apologies, that was me. I didn't want to, it was a few mundane questions I asked, so I didn't want to bother you with them, but now going forward, I'll make sure I do.
yeah, we love the mundane.
We're big over communicators.
No problem.
But better that than the alternative. Okay.
If I don't want to step on anyone's toes.
You're not. Go right ahead. You're not.
Just to, just coming up to speed on your project and the plans and so forth. Matt, you talked about the couple of wildlife tunnels. I didn't see those in the plans. If you could draw my attention to them, it would be
Yes.
great. One of the plan
Okay.
sheets, or kind of,
Sure.
and if you want to share some details about those, that'd be interesting.
Yep, and those details are in the plan set. Let me open that up and I'll share my screen on that. Bear with me a moment here.
I would just say also, in light of Matt's request, we're very interested in the changes you've made that you've described, Matt Leitner. So, when the opportunity presents itself, if you want to show us more detail on those changes, that would be great.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, so let me share my screen here. So again, the wildlife tunnels or crossings that were put in place based on Tetra Tech's review, they wanted to have us put them logically between, so wildlife could cross between the buildings, right? So one of them, I'll zoom in, but one of them is here, and then the other one is up here. And so, so on the plan, and these are called out on the other sheets. This is one, actually it's called out right here, wildlife passage right here. And there's a detail for it as well, which I'll go to in a moment. So one of them is here, which gets between buildings 1 and 2. And then the second one is up here between buildings 2 and 3, right here, wildlife passage.
I see.
Okay. And if I go to the details, here we go, right here. So bottom left here is the detail for the wildlife crossing. So Tetra Tech had a specific animal size that they thought would be most benefited by these. And so we worked with them in establishing a size of these tunnels. And it was for small animals, small critters, to be able to cross through. And that's how we arrived at these, and this being the type of crossing. So we looked at pipes, and our concern with the pipe was that because the bottom is rounded, that it didn't provide enough flat area for animals to be able to effectively get through. So that's why we went with a flat bottom. We also went with an inverted U shape, so these need to support. The reality is they need to support a car, a vehicular load. So they're concrete, but we went with a natural bottom, if you will, so not a concrete bottom. Again, just to try to accommodate wildlife in a way that we thought would be most useful to the critters that would be using these.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have any papers that you can look at for sort of demonstrating the probability of wildlife actually using them? I know, I've got a fair bit of experience with wildlife tunnels of this nature, and a closed, I don't know the length you're proposing. That's full width of the roadway would be 16, 18 feet.
yeah, the road's 24, but there's some additional length because you have to grade down to get to these. So
Yeah.
probably they're I can get the exact lengths, but they're more on the order of 30 or so feet.
Yeah. So my experience and knowledge of the literature suggests that that's probably unlikely to be successful as a design, just because of the closed top and size of length and size. So you might do a little bit of research to see if there's any examples of something of this design characteristic that has been shown to work for small. I assume you're thinking frogs, salamanders, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
small
so
mammals.
we're happy to look into that further. So that this was in direct response to the peer review at the time with ZBA.
I mean, it's a good goal, obviously,
Right.
to improve the ability of wildlife to move across the landscape. But you got the experience. There's a fair bit of experience and research now on this kind of device. So I recommend that you take a look and see if you can find some examples that would bolster your thinking that this will be successful.
Matt,
I'd hate to have you put effort into something that ultimately is unlikely to work.
Matt Byrne, are there alternative designs that you know of that are more effective? That could be used in this context, that is?
Yeah, they're always challenging in the best of circumstances. The Henry Street Tunnel out in Amherst is a good example, long-standing history. It's probably as wide. It's a 2-lane road, country road. I don't know the exact width of it or length of the tunnel, but the thing that makes it different is that it's an open top. They used they used to, I mean, this went in 30 years ago probably, and has been in place for that long and works. But one thing that makes it unique and functional for wildlife, for small wildlife like that, is that it's got a, I'm sure that there's a term for it, and a roadway engineer might know it, but it's kind of an open slotted top, so that atmosphere, rain gets in there, light, ambient light gets into the tunnel, so the animals are prompted to move through it. So there are plenty of examples where, so you could find an example of something that works in a roadway setting, that has been shown to work for small wildlife, salamanders particularly. I don't think this is it, but I think with a little bit of research, you can find some examples that would work.
Matt, it sounds like what you're describing, at least from a landscape architect standpoint, would be called a RIL, R-I-L-L.
That sounds great. I'll have to look that up and see if that's one of the terms that is used in connection to Henry Street. But I think there's a solution there, but with might require a little bit of work to find it.
Do I, if I may, just a quick comment. So Matt, so thank you for making that comment. I think that's a very helpful. I had some experience in doing that. I know it's almost like a trench drain on top of this type of tunnel with the natural light getting in, because small creatures, they don't go into a tunnel, it's a pitch dark. And the other thing we may do is to in a wing wall, guiding wall to the two. So I think the overall setting, I believe the project is a better probably than some other places, because there's two tunnels rather than just one. If we can create in some a curve when the creatures walking at the toe or slope of the road, and guide them to the tunnel with the light coming up from the top, almost like in a small a trench drain type of light and grill, that you can call the real grades, or that's probably we can look at it. I have been attending some seminars. This is the ones I think was end up more helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Wing walls are absolutely critical to make these work, because there's a tendency not to want to go into a tunnel. And so they'll just, if there's an easy route around the obstacle, which in this case would be the tunnel, ironically, they'll take it. So you really do. It takes actually a fairly extensive system of drift fencing functionally, sort of wildlife exclusion fencing to funnel the animals into the tunnel as you were describing. So that'll be an important component of a successful tunnel design. And then also long-term maintenance, that becomes a real issue. And of course, you got to think about the impacts of de-icing and things of that nature, because the reason to put these things in place is early spring migrations of these animals when they're moving around in the early spring, just as snow is melting. And that's a time when there's often a lot of de-icing chemicals mixed up with snow melt and so forth. So if you've got an open tunnel that is sort of open to road drainage and so forth as ice and snow melts, that's something to consider as well. So that might be and your stormwater management might take care of that, might make that a moot point, but it'd be something to evaluate in context of an open topped structure.
Certainly
Right.
something we'll look into.
Right. Yeah, we can. I believe that can be. It's definitely very good comments. I think we can probably slightly raising up the light grill, the light grill grade, so that the runoff is not going into the tunnel rather than pitching away. So to minimize that impact. So yeah, we can probably provide some research on that. I'm sure there are some successful work there, as I know.
Jean, is your hand up?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, it's small. Go ahead.
On the subject of wildlife passing and crossing, I was just wondering what Matt Byrne thought about the likely success of larger wildlife moving from one wetland on one side to the other. And is there, any accommodation that could be made without asking the developer to change the design that would make that work?
Yeah, so, deer won't think twice. Bears won't think twice. As you get into sort of medium-sized organisms, plantings start becoming an issue. Just wide open grassy areas are not good for wildlife generally. They feel exposed, they are exposed. And so it sort of expansive areas of grass and tarmac can be just enough to make small animals decide not to move across a space. So, if it's intended that would all be open, kind of maintained with a little bit of planting, sort of ornamental stuff in between the two buildings, my suspicion is that it would not become a hot spot for migrating animals. Not that you necessarily want a hot spot of migration right through there, but that is an issue. There might be some landscape design features that could make it more attractive to animals to move across the space there, if that's what you want.
Okay. I was gonna, one of the town residents, Sarah Wiley, was gonna make some comments. I see her hand raised.
Great, thank you so much. Really interesting to see these plans and great to hear this discussion about small critters. Mostly because I've been reading up about the vernal pool assessment, and there certainly is a strong spring peeper chorus right in this region, and it's difficult to pinpoint without actually walking into the wetlands where the major peeping session is happening. But I would really like to have some further assessment about the impact on those spring peepers if possible.
Okay.
Matt, did you want to comment on that?
So, yeah, I haven't been to the site yet. So I've only seen it in this view. So I don't have much of a guess as to where peepers might be calling from, but they will breed in lots of different kinds of wetland. And so, it would just take a little bit of exploration to see where they might be on this particular site. I'm interested in this whole open area, what looks like open field that's within the delineated wetland. I assume that's old farm or landscape kind of alteration, I'm guessing. So, there might be some opportunities for some restoration of that wetland area from a vegetative standpoint to improve wildlife habitat values. Strictly speaking, the project being a buffer zone project probably isn't going to have a significant impact on population of spring peepers because they are, they are tree frogs. So, taking out trees will have a kind of depressive effect on a local population, but they're also pretty common and adaptable. So, that's a long way of saying, maybe I should hold my tongue a little bit until I get a little more familiar with the site in person and can think more on that particular problem.
Michael, you had your hand raised?
Yeah. sorry that I missed some of the beginning stuff. So hopefully might say some things that were already addressed or so. But yes, as to the wildlife, I agree with everybody's point and the fact that, right, eventually we'll need a little more work in the design of probably some sort of open graded kind of passageways. And just adding that, as I think Matt started alluding to, is with some attention to detail to the openings on each side that might increase the odds of success, since it's probably a tricky thing to begin with. But whatever it takes and to make the point that where they act and the details as to where those openings actually are and how they're landscaped and set up is going to be important to possibly having these things succeed. And that just brings us also to I guess probably what I'd say might be one of the other bigger areas is the overall landscaping plan and what's done at the edges of on these things here. And then and I'll wait to see whether I think one of the other major areas for review and to get some feedback from the consultants is about all the details about the landscaping plan and to the extent of those little pockets there and what, but I can make more comments when we get to that area, but obviously that overlaps with the wildlife when you get to the openings side there, and that whole idea of a little more to what extent mitigation is warranted or a good use of resources in terms of any changing in the resource area, because we've had trouble when people start mucking around in the resource area on one level. On the other hand, there are easy things that could possibly improve its values.
DeShane, did you want to add a comment?
Yeah, just a quick for the Spring Peeper and Matt's comment about that open field and the wetland scientists delineated the wetlands and they get approved last year. I think it's a great idea. Right now, that open field was molded. It's very flat and probably there's a lot of birds using it. But I think as long as we can come up agree, I can see it. I look at the whole site during spring breeding season. I don't see any valid really vernal pool, just as Matt commented on. Spring peepers can live in PVWs with some water. If a really improvement can do is that open field probably around the edge of it with some kind of planting and incorporated either vernal pool or one of the detention basins or infiltration basins can be incorporated some deep pool area for that habitat. I think that's all open for the commission to look at it, and so we are open on that. Thank you.
That's an interesting thought, DeShane. You know, and I don't know from a stormwater management standpoint, you know, not to rake muck or anything, but possibly going to a constructed wetland design with one or more basins, you know, if you can accomplish your stormwater management needs. You know, you're having a lot of impact in buffer zone, and that does affect wetlands. You know, that's it is understood that buffer zone impacts will result in wetland impacts. And so if you can do things in work that you're already proposing within the buffer zone that adds wetland value, you know, that might be an interesting thing to think about and potentially put on the table as essentially a mitigative measure.
This is the first that we've heard of that. We had talked about previously. That's something we can talk further with our team about.
Yeah, no, this just off the top. So by all means, I'm just putting it on the table for you to think about as an idea to come up with ways to mitigate the impacts you're proposing.
So let's see. We actually have for today we've allotted 45 minutes, and so I think we've got another NOI that's on the clock for right now on our schedule. So I think we're going to have to continue this hearing. And I guess my question, Elizabeth, is, are we going to put it, do we have our next meeting date? I know you emailed me about it, but I didn't get a chance to look.
We do, August 5th.
August 5th, okay. Yes, Jean?
7:30.
7:30. Jean, what were you going to say?
Just that I know that the hearing for 211 Farm is going to be continued. Granted, it's only a
15 minutes.
15-minute slot, but
I mean, can we give this an hour next time around, Elizabeth?
We can, we have nothing on the agenda, so we can do that.
Whoa. Okay. All right. So I suggest, is everybody okay with continuing this hearing to the 5th of August at 7:30 before it? Yes, Michael?
Since I missed the beginning, I guess I'd like to know, I mean, obviously we're going to have to continue. Maybe we could do a little bit more tonight, given the other thing, but
I don't think so.
what, if it's not impolite, since I might have missed it all, what are we doing in terms of what kind of work will be done, let's say between now and then, by the consultant, and was that resolved as to what would be on the table for us to look at on August 5th to carry this discussion further?
well, I would ask Matt Leitner if he wanted to respond to that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we would, our goal, I guess, would be to have at least a letter, a comment letter from BSC, so we can really start, diving into some of these comments and exploring different things. So, if we're going to continue, which I know we're going to, that's about 3 weeks or so from now. So I guess we would hope to at least have comments and maybe even some time to start thinking about them, so we can have a productive discussion and start talking about different ideas at the next meeting.
And I think that it makes sense because Matt Byrne, you had mentioned wanting to visit the site. That's probably what we should be doing in between now and then. So Matt Byrne, do you have a sense, like, what do you need to be able to begin the work that we've asked you to do on this?
Yeah, definitely to schedule a site visit. And if I'm looking at my calendar right now, if we could put something on the calendar with whomever needs to attend, that would be great. I am on vacation the following week, and then it's a short bit to August 5th. But I will, if we can do a site visit early next week, I will do everything in my power to get you a letter with enough time to think about it and respond to it at the August 5th meeting.
We can make ourselves available through the chair. If you could tell us what day that would be.
Would Tuesday, July 20th work for people? Pretty much any time of day. I think, probably figuring about planning 4 hours, but probably not needing quite that much time would be good.
Could we do it at 1 p.m.?
I certainly could.
Yeah, I can do one. I have a doctor's appointment in the morning. Yeah, afternoon. Yeah, that should be good.
Just a question. I've had a question from somebody in attendance. Is the site visit obviously is to allow our consultant onto the property? Is that just generally from the applicants? Is that something you want to just keep as the consultant, or would town residents be allowed to participate? Just, I figured I'd ask because somebody asked.
I think we'd prefer to keep it with the professionals if we could. Probably have DeShang and Matt Leitner be there with Matt.
Okay. I mean,
I think it's a long period of time, and I think we don't want to have distractions if we could avoid it.
Yeah, and it's your prerogative. It's your site, and there have been site visits in the past, although I think it was just for sort of different down boards and committees. But okay, that's fine. But I did want to ask.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. All right, so you've got your arranged site visit, and then Matt says you're saying Matt Byrne, you can turn around a comment letter pretty quickly for them. So is there anything else in terms of the logistics? Thank you, Michael, for bringing that up, that we need to cover?
There's one thing I think probably we will staking out the stormwater basin area to follow up with our discussion on the planting to enhance the buffer zone. So the open fields is wide open, it's easy to see, but the detention basins may be a good idea to take a look of it, and so that we can discuss some kind of tentative ideas. So to entertain on the side.
So this is Matt Leidner, if I may, Mr. Chair. That we have located, so I think as you had stated, there's been some other site walks for other reasons leading up to this. And so we have some of the critical points sort of located out there now, enough to be able to talk intelligently about, where different features are that are proposed on the plan when we go after the site visit. So I don't think we'll be guessing. There's enough features out there already that we can pretty much pinpoint all those locations.
Good.
Is that wetland flagging reasonably present? I mean, is it kind of old enough that it's not there much anymore, or what's the status of the wetland flagging?
I think we have to go look again. I haven't been out there in a while.
Yeah, most of probably definitely have, we use a pretty heavy duty fracs, so they are mostly there, but I'm not sure if all the writings still legible. Yeah, usually those fracs last quite a few years, so it was done only for a couple of years.
Yeah, last time I was there was no problem
Right.
finding them and reading them.
Yeah.
There was no issue. They're not that old, so. But that's a good question, though.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, I do want to move along. Michael, did you have something you want to add quickly?
Yeah, as you might have seen in the chat, there was a comment about whether getting permission, to what extent it would be useful to get permission from abutters to be actually part of the site visit, to the extent that it might be. I'm not sure where that might come into play. But I'm trying to think of whether sort of towards the beginning.
Well, let's do this. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it now because we're already 10 minutes past our schedule. So I think it's something to think about, and we can certainly talk to the applicants about. But I've encouraged one of the residents who commented to, if they have questions for our outside consultant that they think are relevant to the commission's work, that they can certainly submit it to us. And if we do want to sort of take it up as a topic of arranging a site visit at another time, I think we should do that. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. So I move that we continue this hearing until August 5th at 7:30.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Do we feel like an hour? Sorry. I'm a little concerned about whether an hour will be enough time to once we get ourselves together here, and if we get all the comments on wildlife and the landscaping issues and all that kind of different kind of buffer zone issues, whether I have some concerns about a project of this size, that an hour, I don't want to be constrained once we get rolling. And that would
Right.
be more.
But I would say this, that depending on if there's other things that get added to the agenda, I mean, we're not, I mean, unless we do and move expeditiously, I don't imagine we'd be completed with the review of the project at the next meeting. Do you?
I don't know. I just want to leave time to just make sure we get through things, but okay. I mean, there could be some back and forth, but I could believe that an hour. I'd like to leave, to the extent possible, more in like an hour and a half option for that. But
well, one way to deal with that, Michael, is to see if anything else comes up tonight that has to be scheduled for the next meeting, and that's the time to decide what the cutoff point would be for Coolidge Crossing.
Okay.
And the other thing is we'll put it on at 7:30, and if we don't schedule anything till 9 o'clock, then there's the hour and a half.
Exactly.
So,
sure.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, Jean?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
All right. The motion carries. Okay. So we'll be in communication with you, and then we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have
Thanks,
a good night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'll be in touch offline, Jean, through you, and we'll just kind of make sure we're all square on that site visit and everything.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I need 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
Jean, do you want to open and to continue the other thing? While we're waiting?
Sure, if somebody can pull up the legal notice.
You don't need the legal notice for 211. Oh, for
For
the
116 Farm
116.
Road.
It's in the Dropbox.
I can't open my Dropbox.
I'll go see if I can. Okay, you want me to just read it?
Go for it.
Okay, notice of the public hearing. Notice is here, oh, right in front of me in two places. Yeah, I guess I'll continue unless you want to, Jean. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission in Town of Sherburne will hold a virtual public meeting, the Sherburne online at 8:45 on the 15th of July, in this case, 9 o'clock. The hearing will be held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sherborne Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 17, to consider a proposal by Elaine Wu to build a retaining wall at 116 Farm Road, map 15, lot 5D, it looks like. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborne Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given an opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay.
All right. Who would like to present this project? There's only 2 members of the commission were able to make the site visit. Joyce, do you want to present it? Or Elaine, would you like to present it?
Did the abutters get notified? That's the first question we need to ask.
Right.
Yes, the abutters are all notified, and I have received confirmation from the conservation, the Mass Audubon, that they received it as well. So that's the most, and the one in front of us, of course.
What method did you use for getting through to the abutters? Did you hand deliver notices?
I did certified mail through the post office. So I have the receipts, and it's been delivered to the office as well.
So the commission would need to get the green cards back from you.
Yeah, I delivered it along with materials. It should be in the office.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't get the green cards. I got the receipts for the certified mailings. Is that what you mean, Jean? The little postage things that come back?
Normally we wait for the green cards.
Yeah.
You have to wait for the green cards to come back.
Okay, so I wasn't clear about that, but I did receive confirmation. As you can see, Sophia Hills and William Ponds are here tonight, so they have clearly received it. I wasn't really sure about the certified mail thing. I thought the receipts were the thing that I needed to deliver. So
right.
Yeah.
So that just proves you mailed it, and that's good. But you need the green cards to ensure that the person who received them has the ability or the option to attend the meeting.
Understood. Yeah. So the green cards, just to clarify for future reference, so doesn't mean like after they receive it, they sign it and they retain a green card. Do I have to go get to the post office to get it again and stuff?
So the green cards, once they're signed, would go to the conservation office.
Right. The green cards come back to you, Elaine, because you mailed them. You mailed them out certified mail, and on the back of the green card, you put your address. So those green cards come back to you as proof that they received it. Then when you get those green cards, you bring it down to the conservation office to show that everybody's.
Okay. Yes, understood.
That's what we were talking about on site. That there really wasn't time to get those 2 people notified, but and that was that was going to be an issue.
So
yes.
just because I used to work in a post office, just because you send something certified mail doesn't mean you get something back. You have to make sure that you ask for return receipt. That's the little, so if you didn't fill out a green postcard looking thing that they taped to the document, when that gets delivered, that postcard gets ripped off and sent back to you. And like Joyce was saying, that's confirmation that they got it.
Okay, I did fill out a green card, but they just
okay
me in the post office. So yeah. So
Okay.
maybe it's in mail. So
So basically, Joyce, are you saying that we
have to
we don't have the green cards?
Right. Elaine, the 2 that you did send out, did you get the green cards back from them?
No, that's the one the post office gave me. I was assuming you're referring to those, but I will check my mail and see if they have returned yet. I'm not sure if the ones, yeah, it's really,
So what you want to be sure of is, because you may have to re-notify everybody, is that you did it, actually did it return receipt.
okay.
If you got a green card to prove that you've mailed it, there should have been you got a receipt to prove that you mailed it. There was an actual postcard type thing that you attached to the back of the letter that you sent. Is that what you did? Was that it sticks on the back of the letter?
Yeah, there's a thing that was attached there, and you're saying that it will be mailed back to me once they notified that. Yes. I'm unsure if I received that yet. I haven't checked my mail yet, so I'm not sure, but I'll go check if that's sent. But if not, I'll notify everyone once again if that's needed.
So Deshang made a comment that you don't need the green cards. In Sherburne, you need the green cards back as proof of mailing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So then it looks like we have to continue the hearing until we have the green cards.
Yes, that's what I think.
Okay. All right. Well, given that, I move that we continue this hearing until August 5th at Elizabeth, to give Michael his 90 minutes potentially, you want to do it at 9 o'clock?
That works.
Okay, I move that we continue this hearing until August 5th at 9 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Jean?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries.
Miss Wu, I just encourage you, if you have any questions about any other part of the process,
yes.
Joyce is a good source of help, and also Elizabeth, our administrative assistant.
Yes, they've been very helpful throughout the process. Yeah, I'm new through all this, so sorry about that.
No worries. It's not a problem. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we've got a bunch of things on our discussion items, and so we can just go down the list unless people have a particular topic they want to cover first.
Well, we already discussed presentation options for conservation works, and the others, I think you have to lead all the other discussions.
Okay. Well, do we have anything new on 41 North Main, 31 Hunting, or is that just left over?
I just heard at the select board meeting that I guess they voted to reject the second appraisal that was done by the developers, but it seems to be, I didn't fully understand all the nuance, but somehow the appraisal process might be on hold while some of the issues about seem to be a set of issues that are up in the air, and it wasn't clear which one was driving it and which ones were constrained and holding back on other schedules, such as doing a third appraisal. There seem to be some other matters, so it's wrapped up in legal quagmires for the meanwhile.
Okay. Yeah, there was I was there for part.
Oh yeah, you were here. Maybe you understood it better than I.
Well, the only part that I was focused on was they had their own appraisal done, the select board, and then the applicant, or not the applicant, the owner had his appraisal done, and they were very far apart. So they're talking about trying to find a mutually agreed upon third-party appraiser who will not only be mutually agreed upon, but will also use the same criteria by which to value the land, because there was some question as to whether the owner's appraiser was including the actual built project, 40B project, as part of the appraisal, which, the select board is arguing is not appropriate. So yes, it's all caught up in that kind of stuff. Okay. Commissioners' interactions with town residents. This is something I asked to get put on the agenda, and there's a reason why. So there have been, I don't want to talk about any specific situations, but there's been some back and forth and some baseless and some having some merit, speculation and innuendo, and a lot of different sort of just talk about the commission's interactions with town residents. And I'm of the mind just personally that if that's something that, if there's something we're doing that we should not be doing, then we should fix that. If it's just somebody making accusations because they don't like what happened with their experience at the commission, that's not anything we need to pay attention to. But my general sense of things really is that when we're interacting with town residents, whether it's talking about violations or observing something or even site visits or any of those kinds of things, I just want to communicate the message that I think it's really important that we be extra careful in how we approach people, when we decide to approach people, whether or not it's really not even appropriate. That's the wrong word, because I think we are representatives of the commission, and we're within our rights in the regulations to observe things and comment and that kind of stuff. But I think it's also prudent for us to just be sort of conservative when we do interact with town residents in what we say, in terms of whether we should always be thinking, is this something that should be part of a discussion, deliberation? Is it an expression of opinion? Those are the things that we're not supposed to do on site walks, for example. Or if we're interacting with a town resident over something we see that may or may not be something that should be conducted in a jurisdictional area. I think it's really important for us to think about whether we ought to do it on the spot, whether we ought to talk as a commission about it, whether we ought to report it to Elizabeth or to Joyce, and that kind of stuff, only because if there's an atmosphere where rightly or wrongly there's built up, and I think it's wrongly, but rightly or wrongly there's built up a sense that the commission has been too forthright in its interactions, I think it just behooves us to be conservative so that we make sure that everybody thinks that we're following the right guidelines and approaches, and that we're actually doing that. So that's really just, I wanted to just talk about that a little bit and just kind of throw it out there, get people's feedback, but that's kind of my perspective.
This is a tough time for us, once again, for the 9 millionth time, because normally a commissioner's concern would be brought to the agent. And Joyce is the interim agent. She is already has her hands full. So I just say, it's not clear how we should react to things that we see or are concerned about. I think it would be great if maybe we don't have time to do that right now, but we had some sort of understanding amongst ourselves about standards of conduct with people in the public outside of the meeting.
Yeah, I think any of that, and I think of it as sort of guidelines, because I'm just sort of trying to think of examples. Like just as a volunteer, like I don't know everything that I'm supposed to say or not say. We just learned about what to say or not say on a site visit when we were dealing with 3 Oldfield, and I've been on the commission for years. Or I just learned what an indirect abutter was recently, or on and on. Like, because we're volunteers and because we don't have the agent who has more of the professional experience to be able to kind of filter that stuff for us or help us to understand it, it leaves us in a position where what we're doing can be misinterpreted, or the reasons why we're doing it can be misinterpreted. And I, to be honest with you, I feel very protective of us as individuals, because frankly, I think we do a lot of hard work that is generally underappreciated because of the kind of work it is. And I want to make sure that we are protecting ourselves, and that we still do the work that we need to do. And if we notice things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, we should address them. But I just want us to be conservative in our direct one-on-one interactions with residents. Just be cautious and conservative about what you say when you decide to say things, that kind of stuff. That's really what my message is, or my overarching concern is.
I think it would be so much easier when we have a full-time agent.
I agree.
Well, that implies that essentially we use the full-time agent as the conduit for things we observe, and that whether we are in agreement that essentially when you see things that we bring it back to the commission and to the agent.
Well, I thought that was always the understanding. That's what we did with Allery. That's what
Right.
they
No,
did.
no,
with-
I just want to make that explicit again, that that's,
Yeah.
and that even in this era now, whether we need to just follow that in the sense of it gets brought back to the commission maybe, whether it has to just go on the meeting stuff, so that maybe it's in this sort of conservative approach that Neil's talking about, that we just in this, even this time period now, that we still bring it back to the commission as opposed to try to do it ourselves, as maybe a kind of a general kind of working principle. And to also note that the other other things are that, right, for the most part, I think a lot of people are happy with what we do and glad that we're doing it. It's the problems of where there are violations, and primarily, I think, that lead to things that obviously people can get upset depending on their view of the regulatory issues and wetland protection issues. And then it also is, there's a separate process to be going on between, in a sense, our commission and the chair and the select board and others in town to work on a process whereby when issues do arise, that they're dealt with appropriately, because sometimes they don't want to come to us and they want to go, and they might go to the select board or the town administrator, and that it's been talked about that, well, that better procedures will be worked out to the extent that somebody like the select board receives some comments about behavior, and that they're addressed as they come up and in a reasonably focused manner, so that they don't become generalized kind of issues. That, and that I think we're trying to get that understanding with the select board, that it's, things come up, or the office there, things are dealt with. And it's not, doesn't become a lingering or amorphous issue.
Right, and just to echo that a little bit, Michael, I think that there's really two prongs to this. One is how we make decisions about interacting with folks over issues or, just anything. And the other is our work of working with boards like the select board to get information in a proactive way and get information in a timely fashion, so that it doesn't become, just sort of a casual conversation where, I think, Michael, in one of the meetings with the select board, this is back on the 1st of July, I think you mentioned it, that, if you do 100 applications a year, 5 to 10 people are going to be pissed off about it. And that's just the nature of it. And if they go complain, fine. And that's sort of normal. But if that's allowed to kind of bounce around in an echo chamber without any kind of interaction with us about it,
And
so we can say,
fester.
right. And so what happens is it sort of reinforces itself a little bit. It hardens a little bit in that context. So I think you're right that there's really two things. Is one is just how we decide and when we decide to interact with residents, and the other is just working with other towns and with other boards and committee in town, just to make sure that we're sort of giving information back and make sure that when something comes up, they're proactive about sharing with us to get our feedback. So I think that's right on. Okay. Do other people have any comments about that, or does that make sense to folks?
I just wanted to add, this is sort of an offshoot of that, but it's important that if a potential violation or something of concern comes to our attention, and we're inclined to bring it to a meeting, that the property owner should be notified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, procedurally, I agree that if they go on the agenda, that we should notify them.
Right.
Yeah,
Good
agreed.
point.
Okay. Any other input on that? Okay, great. All right, let's see.
What time is it?
It is 9:15, so we still have 15 minutes before 211 Farm Road. I can give an update on the agent position if that's
I think
reasonable.
people are curious about that, so please.
Right, so let's see. I apologize, but things sort of blend together a little bit for me. But as you know, I've been working to try to get us 35-hour benefited position to increase our access to the kinds of candidates we think will do a good job. I've been, I both got formal and informal input from David Williams and others in town, and the process that I've been encouraged to undertake is David Williams has already asked me to submit something to the personnel board. We have a hearing, I think it's on the 23rd, to reclassify the position as a 35-hour position. At that point, it becomes something that, depending on the funding we will need for it, something we may or may not go back to the select board to ask for. So if we, in other words, we need a reserve fund transfer or something like that, if that's where the funds need to come from, or part of them needs to come from. I've also been sort of advised by David Williams that may not come to pass, that the money might be able to be made available from other areas, unfilled positions, that kind of thing. So it's really up in the air, and we're going to work closely with David Williams on where that funding might come from. But if we have to go back to the select board to ask for funding, that's what we would do. And then once that stuff is in place, we would go to the advisory board about, if it's a reserve fund transfer, about doing that. And that's the progression that I've been advised to undertake. Paul Durensis advised that same process actually in that July 1st meeting. I think that's the meeting it was that I talked to everybody about it. And so we've gone ahead and set that in motion. So we've got the personnel board meeting first. That's the place you go to get the buy-in on the position being reclassified. In addition, we have advertised the position as up to 35 hours. And at first I wasn't sure, since we hadn't reclassified the position with the personnel board yet, but David said it's okay to put it in that way. It's speculative, there's no harm in it. And he's hopeful that the personnel board will be in favor of this. And obviously if we need to change the ad, we have to change the ad. But for right now, we've had the ad up. I think we've had, I'll tell you, more applicants. They're coming in. I mean, Jean, do you have a count of it? Is it 3 or 4 at this point? Not that they're all qualified, but
yeah, it's 4.
4.
And that's only in a week.
It's pretty good. That's a big change, because we have, what did we have it up for? How long for the part-time?
A couple of weeks before we had even 2, I think.
Okay. So I'm cautiously optimistic that our strategy of going to a full-time benefited position or a 35-hour position is going to attract more candidates. And yes, Michael.
Oh, no, I need to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
I just wanted to briefly, maybe I could do it on the side with Jean. Is the position now listed with any particular date, or is it listed as until the position is filled to keep it?
It was David Williams' suggestion that we don't put anything like that in there, any kind of a limitation. So there's no limitation.
And also, is it being posted so it's already at MACC, the MMA, and the 3 different wetland
It's
entities?
at MACC, MMA, DEP, MASMCP, which stands for Municipal Society of Massachusetts Conservation Professionals. I have not heard back from the Mass Association of Wetland Scientists yet.
And what about that Southern New England lead? Is that?
I don't know what that is.
I sent you an email.
Oh, you mean the soil scientists?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So I'll reach out to them.
Okay. And I guess we'll see how it goes before we try to go do a more, well, we might spend a little bit of money on something like Indeed or something else, but we'll see.
So
I wanted to ask Neil.
That's one other thing sorry, you go ahead, Jean, because what you just said, Michael, reminded me of another facet of this. Go ahead.
Right. You had conversed with
Jeff
Waldron about bringing on a professional headhunter type person to assist us. And I would say, why wait?
Well, why wait is just because there's no why. It's just because, in the sequence of events we advertised. And I think maybe there was some sense that I had that, well, let's see what this does. And if we get nothing or no qualified candidates, but I agree. I mean, I think, so basically, so let me back up half a step. I spoke with Jeff Waldron. He called and expressed his support for trying to find us somebody who could really help the commission out, knowing that we were struggling. And, he even recommended the possibility of hiring a search consultant to help us find somebody. And if there's money for that, there should be no method, as long as it's legal, that we employ that to help us. So I think it probably for me, next step is to reach back out probably to David Williams and just ask him about that possibility and what would be involved just procedurally from putting that in place. And we'll see what he says. But yes, I think it's a good idea. And if they're offering any kind of help on this front that the select board or anybody else in town in a position to help is offering, I'm going to accept. And because I think it's that desperate a situation. So
I think Joyce agrees.
right, I bet she does. Okay, so that's pretty much where things stand. Oh, there was, there's this thing, the job description says 19 hours, the ad says up to 35. One of the applicants asked David Williams, why does it say 19? And basically he just responded and told them what was going on. It was coming before the personnel board. There was a likelihood of success and so on and so on. But that's why there was this discrepancy that we couldn't update the job description until we had official personnel board approval. So, okay.
Are you considering rewriting the job description, or have you?
The text of the description, or just the particulars of what it is?
Yeah, we had talked once before about simplifying, even though it's not that long. So I just didn't know whether we're okay. I think we're okay with what it is. It's just a matter of changing the hours and the status.
Right.
I think I'd be okay with it, but I guess that's partially because I did some work on it back then, but I don't want to feel like there's any real pride in that authorship.
I think that my appetite certainly is for leaving it be, because I think the ad is the posting itself, the ad is the thing that's going to attract people or not. And the full job description is a full job description. It's, it's everything. And so I think it's okay. I think just changing the hours and reclassifying it as regular part-time instead of, I forget what the category is, but
it's a salaried full-time. But I'd still say to the whole commission, to anybody who's here, go ahead and look at that job description, since I think the many eyes, just to make sure since it's all the effort that some of us are doing, we don't necessarily read it that carefully, just to see if there are some little changes or things that are missing or out of date or something. But I would say it's something that all of our eyes could, to the extent that anybody could finally get to focus on, I think would be useful to read it.
Okay. All right, great. Anything else on that? Questions? Okay. Let me jump to the Zoom meeting recordings, because this is certainly fresh news. So tonight, the select board voted to have all commissions or committees and boards that are under their control, which includes us, that we have to send our meeting recordings to DSC TV to be archived and available to residents. There was some discussion at the July 1st meeting about, and to be honest with you, some speculation that didn't have a whole lot of foundation, in fact, about why we might not be doing that in the past. And I wrote up, I did a little bit of a, email research back and forth back when these policies were first put in place in 2020 around the pandemic, and just documented why we had made the decision to only keep our recordings until minutes were finalized and then delete them. I sent that off to the select board. They didn't mention it particularly in the discussion tonight, but they do think that it's important for residents to have access to these recordings for as long as they want them. And so we will start to do that. We will start to send them to DSC TV. We have quite a number of meetings that I've never gone back and bothered to delete, even though we have finalized meetings. I'm going to send those over as well. Basically just whatever we have. I will say this, I'm highly comfortable that, whatever's going on in our meetings is fine to share, and, why wouldn't it be? And so it's not an issue. We just adopted a certain procedure that they didn't understand why we had. And so I clarified that for them, and now they've made this decision. So that's what we'll do. Yes, Jean.
Was there any discussion with the select board about it being problematic to have two records of a meeting, meaning approved minutes versus a recording?
No. I was also going to ask if they had ever sought town council's opinion about whether meeting recordings ought to be retained for, indefinitely, because in my mind, there's always a legal implication, there's in the sense that, somebody can look at a meeting, a recording, and, you know, if somebody had a look on their face, they could say, oh, well, that person's, you know, their motivation's wrong, or they said this thing and they were joking, but they don't take it as a joke. Whatever it is, there's always a sort of the notion that a recording is both neutral and harmless under all circumstances, I think that's not my opinion. But that's fine. It doesn't matter. We're a public body. We have these meetings. There's absolutely nothing going. I mean, personally, I think our meetings now are as about, you know, as by the book and on time and following the regulations, and we have open discussion about how we ought to apply them objectively. I think we do more of that now than we ever have. And so I'm happy to have this be accessible to people. So they've changed the policy. We'll go with the policy, and that'll be that.
I guess the question is, from Gene's thing, is whether they should just go get whether you want to raise it with them just to make it clear that there isn't anything, but maybe it's not worth our time.
It's not worth our time.
I only bring it up because when I was the agent and I was also writing the minutes and I couldn't keep up, we were just archiving cassette tapes, and that was the record of the meeting. And then, you know, along the line, when a question came up, we were told, well, once you get around to writing the minutes for those cassette tapes, then you should destroy the tapes, because otherwise you've got two different records of the meeting.
Yeah, I remember that, but I guess maybe change.
So town council did express an opinion back last year that we could delete them as long as there was no administrative purpose for which it could be foreseen that they should be kept. Now, one could make the argument that there's always an administrative need, you know, even if it's a year later, you know, just in case somebody needs to check something, or who knows. But that was town council's opinion. They certainly didn't. I don't think David Williams at the time ever asked them, should we not keep these? So they weren't really coming at it from that perspective. But I do think that they certainly rendered an opinion that they could be deleted, but that there being an administrative need could be a reason to keep them beyond when you had finalized minutes.
That seems reasonable enough that I guess it's done issue. We don't have to go ask anymore, given that what you just said. So,
Yep.
Okay, so we'll just keep them and you'll archive it, or we'll learn how to be
I'll
done.
send them over to DSC TV really as soon as I can, and that'll be that. Okay,
Maybe we'll win a popularity contest.
there you go.
No, it was noted in the meeting that we were one of the ones, even though we had deleted some, that we were one of the ones that were sending it in at times.
Yeah,
That's actually what somebody said at the meeting.
I know. I don't recall ever having sent them. So
Okay,
but
well,
yes, I heard the same comment that
Yeah.
yes, Paul. You know that right. It was the DSC TV guy that was there said that he had gotten some. And I thought maybe a dog's age ago, but certainly not recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll keep an eye on the YouTube channel to see how many views we get.
There you go. we got to jazz up our programming. You know, like have like a
Right.
little entertainment.
Well, I mean, we've already got the poetry reading. What else can we do?
True. That's what people tune in for.
I'll have to change my background.
So, okay, wonderful. All right, it is 9:30, so we've got 211 Farm Road, so we're gonna reopen that hearing, and are we continuing it again? Joyce?
Yes, that's going to continue one more time.
Okay. All right, in that case, I move we continue it to the August 5th meeting at 9:30?
We can do 9:30. That's after 116 Farm. It's not half hour long enough, Joyce, you think, for 116 Farm?
It's on for 45 minutes today.
Yeah, I think you should keep 45 minutes for 116.
Okay, so 9:45 now.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Jean?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Carol, you're keeping a low profile tonight.
Yep. More relaxed meeting for me.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see. If that's the case, then we have an NOI at 9:45. So we've got another 15 minutes. Possible request to change meeting schedule.
Did
Elizabeth,
anything come up at the selectmen's meeting about that? that
It's
you
on
know?
their agenda, but it was after I left. So Michael, were you there for any of that, or was that after you left?
It's at the end of their meeting. In various things I've made the argument to a couple of select board members that we've been working on the first and third Thursdays for a millennium, for a very long time, and it helps with consultants and consistency of when things have to be due and the lead times for advertising and stuff like that. And the fact that, I mean, I personally made the argument that I'm not sure whether the issue is, I think their main issue is about for ZBA when there are large projects they want to attend. And I said the issue that if there are really large projects, some particular issues that even come up for conservation, that they can let us know. And maybe we can find some accommodation in terms of how to time things, rather than a rigid rule that we cannot meet at the same times that they do it. And so
I'm just, apparently they want to go alternate Thursdays with us. And I'm just trying to find out from someone who was in the meeting if that was going to be something that you just figure out going forward.
What does that mean? We meet Thursdays sometimes and Tuesdays other times?
No. So like
They
we're
do
the
the third,
first and
second,
the
and
third,
fourth.
so they would do the second and the fourth.
Ah,
That's my understanding from my secondhand knowledge. So
well, I mean, that doesn't particularly matter. If we do first and third or second and fourth, it just takes getting used to. It's still a Thursday unless people.
well, yeah, I don't know that we necessarily will have to move anything. I think I guess we'll just reach out to select board and see.
They've already published their schedule for the remainder of the year, and we have no conflict in August, but we'll have to look past that.
Elizabeth, did you, because you also looked at the schedule, is that right?
Yes, I emailed it to you and Jean today, but I didn't look past August to see if we can.
So they said they were going to reach out to you, Neil. Apparently, that's what's going to happen. So
You mean after now?
to talk amongst yourselves, yeah.
So they were going to, in other words, they weren't supposed to already have reached out, but they're going to.
No, that's what they decided in the meeting. They said that why don't we just alternate Thursdays with conservation, and they'll reach out to Neil to figure it out.
Okay, wonderful. All right, great. It's 9:34. All right, do we have minutes?
You betcha.
Yes, but
Darn tootin', what?
you know what I think is maybe of more interest and more, while we're still a little bit fresh, is to talk about the buffer zone soil testing regulations revisions. And before we start, I would say we were circulated, suggested language. It can't be decided outside of a hearing, but, so there's very little to say about it tonight, other than please read what was suggested and suggest and be prepared when we do have a hearing on this to be able to, weigh in on what you think about the regulations changes. And the only other thing I want to say is I would prefer that if we're going to have a hearing for this, which I think we should, that we not do it at the next meeting, that we do it 2 meetings from now, and that we, given the time that we have between now and then, I would ask commission members to think and take a look at our regulations and see if they can pick up 1 or 2 other tiny regulation cleanup things that need to be made, because this is the opportunity to do that.
Do you feel that, I know it's a gray area of how much we can, without having a formal hearing opened, we've, I think, had some issues before in the past, and I think it's done a little differently with some other boards, the idea of still having discussion of a draft that would be part of the hearing. And that whether it's possible to still do a little discussion of some of the issues in preparing a draft for a hearing, or whether you think that's out of bounds.
I personally, I'd rather, just given the current sort of state of play, I'd really rather just be overly formal. I'd rather be overly formal than not formal enough. So I think we should keep it inside of a hearing context.
Okay. So Elizabeth, let's set it in motion when the time requires to to post a hearing in the newspaper for regulations revisions, and you and I can work on that offline.
Okay.
Right, I guess that your point, Gene, about whether there's other things that we either need to correct or something, because in our, right, in the public announcement, we have to list the specific sections.
Right.
So your point about whether in the next few weeks, people have to come up with if there's any other ideas or tweaks that we need to do, we got to get it in the next
So the
few weeks.
deadline, Elizabeth, we're going to have that hearing in 2 meetings time. What would be the deadline for submitting the notice to the paper?
Let me look at the Thursday. So we would be August 19th. It would have to go in the end of the day on the 11th to run on Friday the 13th.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It'd have to go in August 5th to run on Friday the 13th, the week before.
So
Okay.
for our next meeting, we have to have,
Yeah.
so we should put it on the agenda item for the next meeting, just to, if there are any other regulatory sections that we want to change, just put it as a discussion item on the next meeting to just flag that we got to resolve it. So that's for the agenda.
Okay. All right. We've got time. Do you want to do minutes? We've got 8 minutes to do minutes.
Sure, I can pull up one of them in my normal mode here. My secretarial duties here. Do people see a set of minutes? And are they large enough?
Yep.
Let's scroll down here. I put in a couple of things that you, Cindy, gave me. Couldn't remember besides the names. Was there something else, Cindy, that you had?
Let me quickly see if I can check my email.
I'm afraid to go to the email at the moment without.
I'll try to check my email too. I did 2 separate emails, Michael, so I'm not sure. Let me check.
Yeah. Meanwhile, people can read this thing and see.
No, it was only the names, Michael, that I had for the June 3rd set.
Okay, there. All right, and I put them in.
Rob Wolf spells his name with 2 F's.
Really? It's not in the phone book that way.
Well, that's wrong.
Okay. I know, I had it one way and then I changed it after.
I did the same thing. I had it one way and then I had it the other
Michael,
way.
you have a phone book?
Yes.
Make those?
What do you mean? Don't you
I
have
do
one
too,
for
Courtney.
5 years
I have a
ago?
phone book too.
I actually do have that, yeah.
Yeah, the phone book,
by the
phone book
way,
is always full of mistakes.
Elizabeth, when you do the minutes, a common error is remember to stick that Kelly's an associate.
Oh, okay. Sure.
It's a recurring edit. Should I scroll down? Are people okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Oops. Continued. Scroll down.
Sure. I mean, I've already read these, Michael, so I'm fine with that.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
no,
fine
just-
with it all.
Jean is, I assume it's Jean is looking at it and maybe Courtney's Flower.
Yeah,
Or Carol.
the vote for 416 Orchard, Carol voted nay. on that.
Okay.
Thank you for that correction.
How do you spell nay?
The NAY.
Okay.
as opposed to Neigh?
I don't know. I was just trying to
So fun.
be clear that I wasn't going to be embarrassing myself here. And I guess, Courtney, I guess you weren't around in some parts. We missed the votes. I guess I have to move this. This vote didn't have you.
Oh yeah, this was the meeting where she fell asleep.
Yeah, it legit. I fell asleep at one of these. I hate to
This
admit it.
is, you were there. So I have to move this thing up before this one because you didn't vote here. So I have
Yeah.
to. Okay. Oops.
The 4:30 wake up just gets me every time.
Courtney, I
Yep.
have leaving at 9:15. Does that sound about right?
Well, since we don't have times here, I put it in here after she voted in that
Okay.
one, and she did not vote in the next one. So therefore, since we don't have times, it's simple to just put it in that way. Okay. Any other on this page?
Is Art Allen listed as a guest?
Ooh. Yep,
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
good work. Okay. Tell me when, Jean, Neil,
I'm good for you to move on.
Carol.
Stop. Well, you might want to capitalize Maple Street on 68 Maple Street. And street.
Same to you.
I'm ready to move on. That's the end.
That's it.
I move to approve the minutes from whatever date this was, sorry,
June 3rd.
June 3rd.
June 3rd with the edits as discussed. Second?
I'll second
anybody?
it. I'll second it.
All those in favor, Jean, aye. Go for it, guys.
Cindy,
me-
I. Sorry, Cindy, I.
Neil, I, Michael, I'll call him.
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney.
I'll abstain. Since I was only there for part of the meeting.
Okay,
Motion
Great.
passes.
all righty. I think we can reopen. We're just about there, right?
It's
Time
9:45 now.
Yeah, it
9:45.
just ticked over. All right, so reopening the hearing into 55 Farm Road. All right, so if somebody can refresh me on where we left off. I know we were getting to the point of trying to work out some conditions. Joyce, you had put some conditions together for us. Michael, I think you had sent around some suggested edits, but where's the best place to start? Is it maybe with Joyce? You want to go through what you're suggesting for conditions, or do we need to sort of finalize things before that?
I believe we left it at that we were writing up the order with conditions.
Yeah, we didn't close the hearing. We didn't make a motion to approve or deny.
No, I know that. I'm just, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joyce.
I'm sorry. So Deshang revised his plan to reflect the few things that we talked about and submitted it the beginning of that following week. And I think we're just ready for you all to go through the conditions. If Michael can bring that up. Did you bring it up? Did you make the changes?
Sure, I could bring it up. Right, I mean, right, we generally, often we go through all the conditions and everything else even before they close the hearing, just in case some issue comes up that we need more info or whatever, so. So in that tradition, here is the, here's the draft that Joyce had produced, and there's some track edits for, that I have in here.
Sorry, at risk of setting something in motion and then backing away from it for a second, I just had a question. Is the limit of work around the well? I have to be honest, I'm having a hard time reading this site plan, so I just want to understand: is the well itself, I know, is located outside the 50-foot. Is also the limit of work outside the 50-foot, like erosion controls and that kind of stuff? Is that on this latest version of this plan?
The erosion control was just inside the 50 because the well is at the 50. But the majority of the, and I shouldn't speak for DeShane, but the access point was from outside the 50 from the driveway.
Okay. Cindy, are you wanting to make a comment?
I do, because I'm not really sure where to insert this comment. But I kind of brought this up the last time, and then I did a little bit of research, and so I'm concerned about it. You know, I'm concerned about the well infringing on the inner buffer. So if it's at 51 feet, I'm concerned, you know, that parts of it are going to spill over into the NAS. And, you know, I looked through a bunch of different properties that have come before us over the last year, because, you know, what got me thinking is typically on a property, if you can locate the well outside of the 100, people typically do. And so I'm just having difficulty understanding why this isn't being treated that same way. So for instance, I went back through the last year, and 63 Nason Hill Road, 2 different house lots there. They both located outside the 100. 124 Bogastow Brook Road. They put in an irrigation well and located that outside the 100. 35 Great Rock Road. They located theirs outside the 100. 137 Prospect put in a new well and located that outside the 100. 51 North Main Street, new well located. So I mean, I can go on and on. I can finish my list, or I don't have to, but I'm just, my concern is that it's going to impact the wetlands being within that 100 feet when you could potentially locate it outside of the 100 foot, which is what it seems like is typically done in town. And that's where I'm just having difficulty. And I don't know if this is the time to bring it up or not, but I just am having difficulty understanding how we can allow this, you know, when it's going to actually infringe on that NAS.
Right, and I think that I think we talked about this at some length the last time around, and at least from my perspective, and I thought some others as well, was that even though there's a possibility, since there's nothing else on the plans, you know, that there's nothing else on the plans. We talked about the fact that it's a little bit of an unusual application in the sense that we usually get the house and the wastewater or the septic system and the drinking water wells all on one plan, and this is not happening that way. But that we have to restrict how we treat what's being proposed to just what's on the plan. And we do often ask homeowners or applicants to move things further because there's this general notion, and it's embodied in the Wetland Protection Act at the state level, that the closer you are to a resource area, the more likely an adverse impact is. It's just,
Right.
you know, 75 is better than 50 and 100 is better than 75, and out of our jurisdiction completely is best.
Right.
But I think at the same time, we still have to assess whether or not the activity that's proposed will or will not have a significant adverse impact. And so that's my perspective. But to sort of go back to the point I was originally asking, is that if there is activity within the 50-foot, because it's so close to that borderline, like what I wanted to do really more than anything is kind of go through, just maybe even informally, just what the no alteration zone performance standards was, just to make sure that we've got it all covered, and just like run down the list. Like, are we sure it's not going to do these things? Because, and maybe this is where you and I disagree, Cindy. I don't think the activity proposed, especially if we have monitoring wells during a pump test or something like that, to know that we're not having an impact on wetlands. I think the activity itself of getting the drill rig in and that kind of stuff, my opinion, and I'd ask other commissioners, is that it wouldn't have a significant adverse impact. But that's, you know, that's the whole purpose of our discussion, is will it or won't it?
Right. And so in looking at the, you know, and looking at 5.2, and I'll say 0.8, because that's the one I thought it could impact.
Right.
You know, I don't know, like somebody brought it up the last time and they said, well, it's never been proven, a bedrock well has never been proven to necessarily impact, you know,
right. No,
the wetland area around
Michael,
it.
right. Michael brought that up, that it's
But
really
at the
hard
same time, no one's ever disproven it either. Like, so it's never been proven, but it's also never been disproven. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and personally, the way I sort of differentiate it in my mind, and again, other commissioners can weigh in, but I'd certainly have an opinion about it, which is that I think Michael's point is, it's very difficult when you're drilling bedrock well to connect the draw of the well to any hydrological changes on the surface, just because how are the fractures running? How do you tell where the water is coming from? It's very difficult to do that.
Yep.
But in my mind, putting in, if we're going to condition it so that we have maybe some of these, I forget what they're called, but these surfaces, and I didn't get a chance to look all the way through these conditions, I apologize. But if we have something like that, and the other thing for me that it hinges on is that these are single family dwelling wells. If you were to tell me you're putting in a public water supply, I think it changes things a lot in terms of worrying about hydrological impacts. But because it's for single family homes, it's been ticked off on the list. And I think if it were used for anything else in the future, we've already talked to Deshang last week, that would come back before us because it's a real change. Those kinds of things, I think, protect against some of the things that that we as a commission have to worry about regulatorily. But I'll open it, and I see Brian and Bob also have their hands up, but I just wanted to see if any of the commissioners have any feedback first, and then I'll open out the conversation.
I guess I'm on the same page as Neil on this. I don't really need to belabor it more than that, but that's how I'm looking at it.
Okay. Michael?
I'll just add, I mean, I agree that there's probably that little bit of issue of how much do we let people to play around right on the 50 versus should you put the well at 52 or 53 so that you're just clearly outside of the no alteration zone. So there's maybe a little bit of an issue of a few feet that may be, whether it's a slippery slope or not, but that's mainly the only little thing, other than I agree with mostly of what you said, and particularly the point about that for single family wells, that hydrologic impact from down below, and whether there's any interaction with the overburden groundwater, is essentially, we have not requested that kind of monitoring because we presume that there's not going to be a significant adverse impact. Whereas when you go larger than that, that's where we've had the monitoring requirement and would have such. That's why I have that comment in there in the draft there. But I'll stop there.
Okay. Carol, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I would just say that
to your comment about, and I was not in the last meeting, that Deshang said they would trigger a different process if there was multiple dwellings. And yeah, I haven't had a chance to carefully look at the order of conditions, but it seems like that should be someplace. In other words, that I know when we've had bigger developments, the well testing has looked at that, the question of supply and potential impact. So I don't know whether that was built into this order of conditions or how that could be made apparent that this is for either, a 1 or 2 family project. I guess it does say.
It says it. We put that now. We put the edit right in there just to be.
Yeah. Okay. That makes me feel more comfortable with it.
Okay. If there's no other commissioners, Brian, I think you had your hand up first, and then we'll go to Bob. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just have to unmute, and I'm still getting used to raising my hand on a computer.
Right.
Hi, Bob. I'm sorry. So for those of you who don't know, the Murchisons and the Moores are very friendly and we get along, and nothing the Moores say is in any way supposed to be taken as us trying in some nefarious way to prevent Bob from doing what he's permitted to do with land he owns or might own next door to where we live. And we like Bob quite a bit, and I want to make sure that's in the record. The one thing we are concerned about, as I mentioned in our last meeting, and Bob, I'm sorry I didn't have time coming home from work today to talk to you about it before the meeting, and this is not meant to be a blind side, but it's in the record from last week, was that we're just concerned that by virtue of allowing someone to put a well in on parcel B, any surrounding parcel that happens to fall within the protective radius of that well loses some of its ability to put in an SAS. And for the last 6 to 8 months, we've been working to try to start the process, which is, I don't need to tell you people on the commission, a lengthy process in the town of Sherburne to get a replacement SAS in. So we're in the process of doing that, and we're just trying to make sure that we don't lose our ability to install a replacement SAS by virtue of where a well is placed next door. And in the meantime, the only other thing that really has come up is at last month's meeting, there was a plan presented that showed little black outlines of where I believe potential house sites were, and several SAS systems, meaning I'm assuming that means proposed SASs that might be put in. And my general feeling was just, and this should be taken both for 55 and I think 65 is the hearing that you're going to continue at 10 p.m. My only concerns would be that if the town intends someone to develop land in a certain path or along a certain vector, which starts with approval of a development or multiple houses in a small area, or even if by right, you're talking about a development, that it seems to me like the process would be starting with the full plan and walking back from there, as opposed to starting with the individual components of the plan to see like where the chips fall. And, I think it's a total of 5 or 6 wells are being proposed. I'm sorry if I get that wrong. It's more than 2 for the 2 parcels as they now reside. That to me says there are multiple houses. And then there's 4 or 5 SASs. So that to me says there's multiple houses per parcel. So to me, that seems like we're not seeing the full plan and the impacts from the full plan. And I believe that the commission should be afforded the opportunity to weigh in on the full plan as opposed to these little individual pieces as a whole.
Right.
And I think those are my only comments for the evening. And I've had a very long day, but I am very, very appreciative for all the time that you guys have put in listening to people like me talk. And I think that's all the Moores have to say tonight, because we understand you only have certain amount of jurisdiction, but when you do vote tonight if there's a way to ensure that whatever applicant at whatever parcel in the town of Sherburne follows the town's intent for permitting. I think that's all we want to make sure happens. That's all.
Right, and just so I can to respond briefly, because I think this you made the same points at the last meeting, and I appreciate them. And I would say that it's not within our purview to require an applicant to submit more fully developed plans. If they want to submit a plan for putting a well in, they can do that. We don't really have any control over that. And then the other thing we mentioned is we also can't, especially when there's not an existing wastewater system where the wells are sort of in conflict with the setback, there's nothing we can do about that either. We did sort of let you know at that time that, if you have a failed system and don't have anywhere else on your property to put it, you can certainly put it even in our jurisdiction. We're not going to stand in the way of that because, that's not what we do. So I would say those things are there. And I think to the point about multiple houses, again, our concern is there as well, just from a hydrological perspective, and the things that are within our jurisdiction, the 8 interests of the Wetland Protection Act, which are also in the Sherburne Wetland Bylaw. And so that's for us, I think, this notion of ensuring that it is a single family well, and that, we make sure that the process of drilling those wells, where the spoils go, where the water that's coming out when they first drill the well, where that's going, putting all those things in place are the things that we can control and that are within our purview to consider. I don't know if any other commissioners want to respond to Mr. Moore's comments, but also Bob has had his hand up for a while, so maybe we can jump to there unless the commissioner wants to weigh in.
Let's wait for Bob and then I'll make a comment or two.
Okay, Bob, go ahead.
Thank you. Apologies, I could not be there at your last meeting, but here I am tonight. I'd like to address kind of a few different things that people have said, and to maybe clarify some things. First, I want to remind the commission that I personally have installed 2 wells on the 50-foot line from a wetland approximately 4 or 5 years ago. They were, in fact, multifamily wells. So you have approved in the past, frankly, a much more heavily wooded area for us to build 2 multifamily wells, 51 feet, I believe it was, off of the wetlands line. We were very careful at the time to work from the other side, if you will, and to have all of the protections right along that 50-foot line. And frankly, we were extremely successful in protecting the wetlands. And now we have a great community over there, and we have lots of water, and the wetlands were not impacted. Not only were they not impacted adversely, they weren't impacted at all. The only thing you can see there today is a pipe in the ground. That's it. So I just like to let Cindy know that it is something that this commission has approved. And I'm sure that I was not the only one that was given permission to do that. A couple of people have mentioned about a multifamily, this being a multifamily well on 55. It is not. It's being dug for a single family home for a house that will likely sit on approximately 1 acre on Farm Road. It couldn't be more typical for the town of Sherburne in a 1 acre zone. That's what we do. It turns out that the location of this particular well is impacted by the 2 septic systems across the street, by the wetlands that we've worked with you very hard to identify and to map out and to show. And when you do all of that puzzle, the well can go where the well can go on a 1 acre lot. To talk about the well going 1,000 feet away, this will be a 1 acre lot, not a 5 or 8 acre lot that's being developed. Let's see, in terms of Brian's situation, and I'm very sympathetic to having a failing septic system. Nobody wants to have a failing septic system. I had one at Farm Road many, many years ago. And like Brian, I came to the commission and I came to the Board of Health and I fixed it before I needed to because it was about 60 feet from Farm Pond. So Brian, you should fix your septic system, but there's nothing about this well that's going to impact Brian's ability to put his septic system on the land. I mean, if he put the septic system in conflict with this well, it'd be probably 40 feet from the wetlands. I can't imagine that you would want him to put a septic system 40 feet from the wetlands. So I think even Brian himself said that where he wants to put his system is, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, I think you said when I reviewed the video that it was approximately 200 feet away. And that's a pretty comfortable distance in Sherburne in a 1 acre zone.
Bob, just one quick word. It is ironic, of course, that I have no say over where I put my septic system.
Well,
but that's not the point of my meeting tonight. I just wanted to put that in the record and please keep going.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is that, as I'm sure you're aware, you're going to be allowed to put in a septic system no matter what. That is an absolute. You will be allowed to put in a new septic system. Nobody will stop you from doing that. And that's the law. That's the law for conservation. It's the law for Board of Health. They have to give you the variances. They get to choose the place they think is best for the environment for you to put it. But ultimately, they have to allow you to put in a system. But in any case, we're not talking about this well and that septic system being in conflict. And frankly, even if they were, which they're not, it wouldn't be a matter of discussion at the Conservation Commission. And I'll leave it at that. And I think that is all I have to say. So thank you.
So, of course, before we go any further with this hearing, we haven't given ourselves a ton of time for the two hearings. One was 15 minutes before the other. And I think it probably makes some sense for us to continue this hearing, open up 65, continue that, and come back to this one. Probably is the best way to do it, unless somebody has some other genius idea.
Well, that makes sense because it's a lot of it's the same issues for both orders.
Can we just vote to combine them?
No, they have to be treated separately.
Sorry.
Don't extend it too far out into the future when you continue it. So
right. Well, I would continue this for about a minute, and then I would go and continue the other one. So let's give ourselves. I move that we continue this hearing till 10:11 p.m. this evening, 2 minutes from now.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, Neil, aye. Carol?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. I'm reopening the hearing into 65 Farm Road, and I'm going to continue that until, how much time do we need? I mean, I'm ready to dive into these conditions. 20 minutes?
At most.
Okay. I move that we continue this hearing until 10:30 this evening.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Neil, aye. Carol?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. I'm now reopening, it's 10:11-ish. I am now reopening the hearing into 55 Farm Road. And let's pick up where we left off. Michael, I thought you had a comment, and then also I noticed there's Mr. Fenno up top there who's had his hand up for a while, but Michael, do you want to?
If he's had it for a while, let him go next.
All right. Mr. Fenno, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
I had a question. I don't know if, I guess I'm not that familiar with the process and what's exactly before the commission, so or if this question is appropriate. But so my name's Arthur Fenno. I live at 58 Farm Road, which is directly across from 55 and sort of diagonally across from 65. It looks like what's being proposed is the, I guess, drilling of some wells and the impact they'll have on the wetlands and if that were approved, for lack of a better terminology, or maybe that is the right terminology, is that this being approved? such that if, for instance, the applicant wanted to come back and also put in septic systems or houses or whatever else, that would have to be another commission hearing?
Yes, so basically any activity that occurs within our jurisdiction, which is in a wetland or resource area, is also called, it's the same thing, or within 100 feet of it, which is in the buffer zone, that's our jurisdiction. They have to come before us to get approval for that work and to get it conditioned in a way that protects essentially that protects the wetlands. So yes, if they are putting anything else that's inside of our jurisdiction, whether it's septic systems or houses or anything else, they have to come back with a separate application.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Michael?
I was just gonna quickly say, I mean, right. I think as Brian and Bob both pointed out, I think from last week, looking at the radius of the well now and where it stretches, that I think what you, Brian, had marked up as where your septic was gonna go doesn't look like it would be impacted by this well. But at another level, and it really comes down to when these things get approved by the Board of Health, really, is that, yes, I've had conversations at a site talk with people in Natick as well as in Wellesley and the wetlands, and in general, right, there's a sort of a regulatory gap about the issue of making it first come, first served in terms of how people can use their property and even the impact it has on the neighbors' use rights with the radii around different developments, and that there's nobody that I talked to had any, and it's something for us to think about maybe in the future, to what extent that could be a factor moving that for anybody's regulations, that to some extent, the extent that you can lessen the impact on your neighbor in terms of the radii of different things, that could even be a factor to apply in our regulatory process, or even the Board of Health or the Planning Board. So it's just a fact of where the state of regulatory structures at the moment. But we can go back to the whether we're going back to these conditions here and adding them, because I think there might be a difference of opinion. I'll dare to summarize that some people might feel uncomfortable about whether anything should be able to be in the outer buffer zone, even if it could be outside of the buffer zone, moderated by, as we've said, that that there's such a low impact from the inputting of this level of well that we can't define a significant adverse impact. That it might be a different opinion, but I think there's a majority of us who would agree that moving ahead with this kind of order of conditions would be supported by a majority, I think, versus whether we should just make that clear versus before we plow through this thing or not. So I'll stop there before I go back to what's on the screen. You're muted, Neil. Neil,
I was coughing. Sorry.
Oh.
And I forgot to unmute myself. Your point's well taken. I know, Cindy, you had expressed some concerns, and I see that Carol's hand is raised, but Courtney, Michael, I think I can read your opinion. Jean, Courtney, Cindy, Carol, do you feel comfortable enough to go forward with going through these conditions at this point? And if you don't, it's fine, just tell me. But
yes, I do.
Okay. Okay. Carol, did you have a separate comment? But can I ask you about this particularly?
Well, I think this can be conditioned. Yeah.
Okay. And then Cindy, are you still feeling uncomfortable?
Well,
or
I mean, I think I maybe I didn't state my position well enough, but I don't know. As I look at the plan, I'm not saying that well has to be driven 1,000 feet back into the woods at all. I don't know. Maybe it could go in the front there. Well, I don't know. I'm not the planner that comes up with all of this, but it would seem to me that there are other places on that plan to put the well. And I just think in doing my research, it seems like numerous, or may I even go out on a limb and say a majority of the wells in this town are placed outside of jurisdiction if they are able to be. So I don't need to keep repeating myself. I just tried to maybe make what I said earlier a little bit clearer, but hopefully I did that. Hopefully I
You did. Thank you, Cindy. Carol, did you have another comment you wanted to make? But before, sorry, Carol, before you do that, and you can make the comment regardless, but procedurally speaking, you were not here at the last meeting. You're allowed as a commissioner to vote on the application if you can attest to the fact that you have watched the recording, or I think I think that's what it is. Maybe Michael or Jean, you can kind of remind me what the specifics are, just because I want to get that straight.
Yeah, she has to have, in some fashion, caught up on what was discussed.
Right. It's a transcript or a recording. That's right. That's the language, I think.
That's what I was going to add. That if she's read the minutes,
Yeah, there's
draft minutes.
Yeah. So Carol, and you can still participate in the discussion, but you may not be able to vote. Were you able to bring yourself up to speed on this project from looking at a transcript or I mean, viewing the recording?
No, I did not view the recording. And
all right, so then you should recuse from the voting part of it, but you can certainly have your input.
I will do that, and I'll watch the recording after this meeting. I guess this is kind of just related, which is, the NOI identifies this as a 8.23 acre parcel at 55 Farm Road, and then Bob just mentioned it's a 1 acre parcel, and I'm just wondering if the NOI should it not match? Should it be 1 acre? Which also, by the way, kind of tells us why it's constrained. So I guess I'm just putting that out there that, that was an interesting comment to hear, and I'm wondering about that.
I don't think we're voting on the basis of that kind of information, like where a house might be or not.
Well, but I think to Carol's point, she's wondering, it seems to her that there might be a discrepancy between whether or not it's an 8 acre lot or a 1 acre. I mean, it's a 1 acre zone, but maybe if Bob could just sort of address that, because I think it's just more of a technical confusion than it is a thing that we have to vote on.
Before he says it, I guess I would just say that he might have said it's 1 acre, or that he's looking forward to a 1 acre development there, but that's not part of what's been submitted here. And so,
okay, I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm
Bob,
getting at.
is that right?
Yeah, so I was just trying to give the commission some helpful information about my thinking, but Michael's absolutely right. It currently is the property it is, but when you ask me why I'm not looking at putting the well 1,000 feet away, and by the way, to drive a truck through incredibly difficult terrain and heavily wooded terrain, I was trying to give you a little color around that. Obviously, I'm looking for permission to build a well at 55 Farm Road on the 8 change acre property.
Okay, that makes sense. And Michael, I understand your point. I don't think I got it in the beginning, but now I understand what you're saying. Okay. Okay, so why don't we then turn our attention back to the conditions? Michael or Joyce, are you going to walk us through those?
The question is whether you guys can see what's on the screen here for the findings.
I can.
And which are fairly straightforward. And then I could go down to what's sort of the practical ones that are less than the generic issues. But does anybody have any comments, which could include the applicant, on what's being?
I have some comments that would apply to both orders that are just details that I think need to be corrected. This first comment is for Elizabeth to pay particular attention to the date at the top of the orders, where right now it says June 15th, that's today. The date that should occur there is the
Not
date
today.
that it's issued. And I'm assuming Elizabeth will, if everything is in order, she will issue this on Monday. So, or if it's Monday or Tuesday, it should be the date that you actually send it out.
Well, once the signature sheets are signed, I can issue it. So that takes a few more days.
Okay, so whatever date that ends up being, it wouldn't be June 15th.
I changed it to July. Yeah, I remember wondering whether that was
July
what
15th.
the date was for. But okay.
My next comment is about the list of, on this first page, of the plans. I think the most recent one is missing.
Oh, yeah, right.
I have a plan that Deshang kindly had blown up for me for my poor eyes. And the date on it is July 2nd, 2021.
Yeah,
So
that's the
not
one that's in the Dropbox, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I prepared this list before he issued that. Sorry.
right. And it has a different description or title, if you want to call it. I can tell you what the title is if you want to write it now, Michael.
Sure.
So it's July 2nd, 2021. The title or the description is Drilling, Spoil, and Pumping Discharge.
Oh, it's really.
Spoil.
The file is close. I have it open on my screen here. I'm just trying to.
Okay.
So you're just reading off the title on the plan that's in the, because the title, because I see it as Wetland Resource and Proposed Well Location Plan.
Well, I have the plan right here next to me. It's got a different description.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the one that's in the Dropbox.
All right, well then there's a discrepancy.
Um,
Deshang, what do you want to call this plan?
The plan is right. The revision detail, that's the one for the spoil and pumping management. That's just for that revision. But the plan title is Wetland Resource and the Proposed Well Location Plan.
Okay. Okay.
Right, that's what I see on the one in the Dropbox.
Right. Yeah, that's remained the same.
Okay, fine.
It's just in the revision.
The July 2nd
revision.
2020 revision.
Right.
Okay. Anything, Jean?
Other comments, rather changes that you put in on this first page, Michael, I'm fine with, except a couple of little things. Under A, okay, now you've changed it and you've added the word zone, that's good. I had a question though. I don't see your comment that you did send out to us in paragraph B, where you wanted to write the outer half.
It is right here.
I don't know why you'd have to make that distinction. It's the outer buffer zone. We don't do that.
I actually find using that, right, we have been using that, but I think it's actually very poor, that it's imprecise. The outer 100 could be interpreted as another 100-foot zone.
No, outer buffer zone is 50 to 100.
Right, if you want to put outer 50 to 100 buffer zone, then that's okay. I just don't want to have outer 100-foot buffer zone.
But hold on, Jean, before we go to B, can I go back to A?
Sure.
So it says, there's a comment there from Michael just about if it were to ever become a multifamily well and the effects there. But I just want to make sure that when we say the drilling of a bedrock drinking water well for a, do we want to say for a single family dwelling? Because, and why are we saying located outside of the NAS? Oh, it's the well that's out. Sorry, I'm getting confused. But the language there actually is a little confusing. It's saying for a single family dwelling, it's almost like it's referring to the dwelling, not the well. So
yeah,
we should fix that. And then also for a single family dwelling, it does not exist. So maybe it makes more sense to say a drinking water well designed to service a single family dwelling or something like that, where it makes it clear that that's not on the plan. I do not want to suggest that we're doing anything related to an existing or proposed within this application single family dwelling.
You might want to put the word in designed to whatever Neil said for one single family dwelling.
Single family dwelling is a standard term. I think single family dwelling is the
You
term.
could say designed to
equitable-
serve, you could say designed to serve a single family dwelling, and that I think would sharpen it just a little bit.
Okay.
I think that's fine. And look, if Michael wants to put 50 to 100 and P, you know,
Yeah,
it's 1026. Let's just bang it in.
I'm okay with 50 to 100. I'm not happy
Okay.
with the outer half of.
Yep.
I wanted to add in paragraph D, towards the end, sufficient to demonstrate that the proposed activity will not cause permanent alteration
Well,
to the wetland resource areas or buffer zone.
oh, so you're adding the buffer zone in here, okay. Right, so you want to add in buffer zone in that.
And the word permanent will not cause permanent.
Wow, there is a minor permanent alteration of the wellhead. That's why it's whether I mean, right, it gets a little tricky once you start. You could say significant adverse alteration, but it contradicts what we have below, where I stuck in something saying that the only permanent disturbance is just simply the wellhead pipe. So I would prefer not to use those words as opposed to some other any significant negative alteration. Is that okay?
I'm okay with that, yeah. And my only other comment is towards the end in condition number 30.
That's the one where I have comments. Yeah. Before we move on from this, I'd like to ask, I think we can ask the applicant, Shannon or Bob, about any issues on what we have here.
Well, just as far as what we've seen on the screen, my only comment was the same as yours, Michael, which is to say that there's no permanent change to the buffer zone will be incorrect. There's going to be a steel pipe in the ground, obviously.
Right. Yeah. So we can go down to. So that's covered. We'll deal with that later below. I mean, I don't know if people want. I guess to the extent that people want to see. Normally, we haven't gone through it at this level here, but in front of the whole commission, the only question is whether I would say most of the other stuff is standard things until we get down to 30. So I wasn't going to take the time to go through all of these things here, where that's just a format change. There's some other format changes on.
Well, unless anybody else on the commission wants to, but it doesn't. I don't hear anybody.
Let's go to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, the nitty gritty then comes down. It's basically about, it's making clear that there's no clearing of vegetation, there's no tree cutting, there'll be erosion control, the equipment in terms of leaks or anything else like that, nothing stored, standard stuff here. Number 30 is where you basically get down to the fact that, right, this is a very minimal impact. And just clearing up that, what did you have?
I just, I wanted to be more specific in both orders about vegetative cover. Do we want to specify in-kind seed or native seed?
Well, keeping in mind that what's around the wellhead now adjacent to the driveway, it's just organic material. There's no vegetation to speak of.
Well, so is it stable? Just being,
yes. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe my comment would only apply to 65.
Right. The one I wrestled with the same thing you're talking about when it says restored to original conditions, that essentially that covers what we're looking for, that basically we'd expect them to do something that fits in what's there. And so that's why I said, well, should we say more? But it really just comes back to the original condition standard that I see Bob nodding his head. It's sort of obvious now with that wording. Do we have any other changes besides what I've stuck here for 30? Or any comments from anybody?
Not for 55, just that if we can
No.
flip to 65. I
Oh,
don't
no,
know.
we have to close this one and move on.
Have to close it.
Yeah. I think moving on, there were no other than a few formalities here. The only condition in perpetuity in this case is the fact of going back to 11, which is a normal one of that the order of conditions should be forwarded to the next property owner.
Could I suggest the demarcation at this point?
You can suggest it. I've thought about it. I have my own view about that, but you want to say more before I give my reaction?
Just that, so I would just suggest like we look at every property and suggest demarcation from an educational standpoint so that when people move to that property, they'll know that that there's a no alteration zone and wetland or resource area have out there that they need to respect. And so I'm just thinking this might be the time to do it, to put in those demarcations, because this is before us now.
I guess when I thought about that issue, I felt that I would, at this point, since they're not asking about the house or anything else, that I think that I think it would be most appropriate to do the demarcation work when and if there's actual buildings and other work done on the property, that would be a better time to cite those kind of things in terms of whether we're putting it at the resource area or putting it out of buffer, that there's not a useful educational point at this, to put anything at this point, is my view.
I do understand what you're saying, Michael. However, I feel like strike while the iron is hot, because what if the house is outside of jurisdiction? Then you can't condition it with demarcation.
Even if the house is outside jurisdiction, the pipe to the water and the electrical to the well will have to be dug. There'll have to be a trench dug, and that will capture a notice of intent.
So I think we're gonna have another opportunity for sure.
Okay, all right.
So I would hold off.
Okay.
Any other comments on this thing?
Nope.
I move that we close the hearing.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael?
Aye.
Joyce?
Jean.
I was like, Joyce doesn't vote.
Actually,
something-
I have a discussion item.
Have a discussion.
No, I'm halfway through.
Okay, fine, forget it.
Jean?
Aye.
And Carol's recusing, and Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Point of clarification, this is to close.
Correct.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries.
Joyce, you and I are interchangeable.
Sorry, it's especially when the screen is small, and you're just lined up on the side, it's really hard to see who's what, especially even with my reading glasses. Anyway, okay. So then the next thing is I'm going to read portions of our findings here. And so I move that we accept these findings, or I never get the language right for this, but whatever, here we go. Here's the motion.
Work on that.
Sorry.
Yes.
Are you going to move to approve subject to the following findings?
And
yeah, but the problem is that the approved language always comes at the end. And so that's why I never know where to put it.
Okay, that's
You can
just
put
what
up
I'm
front that you're moving to accept these findings and approve.
Right, I'm moving to accept these findings. I'm just going to read portions of it.
Sorry.
So the commission here, so this is the motion. The commission hereby finds that the work proposed to drill The proposed drinking water well, which lies within the 100-foot buffer zone, will not result in adverse impacts to adjacent wetland resource areas. The commission further finds that the applicant has presented evidence sufficient to demonstrate that the proposed activity will not cause alteration to the bordering vegetated wetland during or after construction if all conditions in the order are met. Additionally, the Sherburne Conservation Commission finds that the following conditions are necessary to protect the wetland resource for the duration of the proposed project. The commission orders that all work shall be performed in accordance with said conditions and with the notice of intent referenced in the special conditions section of this order, and has been edited and modified this evening. To the extent that the following conditions modify or differ from the plans, specifications, or other proposals submitted with the notice of intent, the conditions shall control. I don't think I need to read F, so I'm just going to jump to G.
Second. Oops, sorry.
Yes?
I think we could second it, but.
Well, no, I'm not there yet. Furthermore, the Sherburne Conservation Commission hereby finds that the proposed project is approved subject to the findings and conditions contained and discussed as with edits herein. How's that? Do I have a second?
Second. Sorry, you just do it differently from what I'm used to. That's all.
Great. I actually have no allegiance to doing it anyway at all, as long as we have a motion, a second,
prepare
and
a
we read the
script so we
findings.
can get this straight.
Okay, I have a second. Any other? So any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Nay.
Sorry, did you say nay, Cindy?
I did, nay.
Okay, so the motion carries, what is it, 4-1? No, 5. Okay, all right. 4-1, thank you. I can't talk either, or add, I mean. Okay, so that is over and done with, and we're running a little bit late for 65 Farm Road, but let's jump into that. I actually have to step away for just 1 minute. So if you want to get started on it, you can, and I will be back in about 60 seconds.
Do the same then, maybe, unless you can open it.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, we're reopening the hearing for 65 Farm Road and finalizing the conditions. I think, wait, do we have a quorum? 1, 2.
Yeah, right. You,
We
me,
have quorum with
Carol,
Carol.
Cindy. Yep.
The conditions that I modified for 55 on the first page predominantly also apply to 65, that being the date of issuance and the making sure that we have listed all of the plans, including the most recent plan from July 2nd, 2021. I think I won't move on until Michael, you're back.
I can pull up the equivalent for 65 and we can walk through it. I don't know why I'm not seeing it open right now. Let me go open it up. I'll be right with you in 10 seconds here.
And here's my opportunity to remind everybody to sign the signature pages, please.
Okay, let's see. Do we see 65 here?
Yes.
I got to make the same edit, some of the same edits here that
The date of issuance.
Hey, Michael, you
Yeah.
have you have Julu, and it needs to be July.
yeah, same, yeah, right. I'm
Well,
trying
who's
to,
finalizing this? Michael, are you
I'm trying to be,
this?
I'm trying to be creative.
Michael,
You're timing me.
are you finalizing these, Michael?
Well, I'm going to send in the files that we just worked on. I'm going to send them in
To who?
to Elizabeth. Oh, what? Where?
I'd say it would either be you or Joyce, and since you made all of these corrections, why don't you just finish the job?
No, I mean, it's done. It's just a matter of,
Right, accepting the changes is what I'm talking about.
oh yeah, oh, that's nothing. Fine, then I'll send it to Joyce and Elizabeth and you and Neil, and you guys can process it.
If you accept the changes as discussed, you can just send it to Elizabeth.
Okay, fine. Like I do the minutes.
Right.
Okay, whoops.
Are you okay with that, Joyce?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, do we want to just start looking at the wording here as we go through? Because we had a lot of the same issues, but there's a little bit more specificity maybe here. in
Or are
terms of
you
how
gonna
some of
change
these wells.
that suggestion that Neil made for the design of, or whatever he said?
Oh yeah, that is a good idea. Let me go. Let me
So
pull it.
it would say 3 drinking water bedrock wells for 3 single-family dwellings.
Designed to serve.
Designed
Designed
to
to
serve
serve.
3 single-family dwellings.
Okay, 3 drinking wells. The wells will be, okay, that is there, so I can make it a better sentence here. 3 drinking water wells designed to serve 3 single-family dwellings, period. And then down here,
Maybe you should make the wells will be located outside of 50, not the well,
oh yeah,
because they're referring to
I
3.
meant that.
Oh,
My hands didn't notice my brain thinking. Let's see.
No alteration zone.
Paragraph A.
Buffer zone.
You
Okay.
need the word zone after alteration.
I know, I'm seeing that. Guess I don't need all this. Maybe I should keep in buffer zone. I don't know.
No,
Okay, oops.
what happened?
Okay, you back? Did it work or did I lose the share screen?
Yeah, I don't see it anymore.
Okay, let me go get it back. Okie doke. We're back.
Yes.
Yeah. So paragraph B, the same change that we talked about for 55, the outer, you want to describe it as the 50 to 100.
I assume it's basically, is it an isolated wetland as well as there's BVW? This of the area around that. Is it purely isolated wetland? That's why I have put it in here.
No PVW for that, just isolated.
Do you agree, Joyce?
I thought that there you have this, some of the area that extended beyond that water.
No, the whole thing is isolated though. Bordering refers to bordering on a stream or a lake or a.
Yeah. Or an open, well, but it's also open water, whether that wetland, okay. I mean, when I was reading the definition of it, it seems a little gray.
I guess if you're saying this is a pond, although it's.
Yes,
small.
but I was trying to figure out at what
Yeah.
point that this is an open body of water and therefore that some of it
Yeah,
is
I guess
BVW.
Need to be 1 acre.
Oh, to make the hurdle for calling it
That I don't know, so.
Yeah,
1 acre of a certain depth.
right.
And
So you're saying I should delete this, my insert? Is that you, Joyce, you would agree with that?
Yeah, I didn't have that, so I was treating it as an isolated wetland.
Okay. I just added a few typos. Anybody else, commissioners or applicant, have any comments on what's on the screen?
just the, including the most recent plan in C, like we did in the last one.
Hold on, what, we did it in B. What's the date for we did it in B.
In B.
I mean, it's in C. Do you see the edit on the screen? It's point B under C. Do you see what I did on the screen here?
I do. Yeah, you need to add a plan from July 2nd.
That's what's on. Do you not see that? Do you not see that there?
I see it now. Sorry.
Okay, fine. Just want to make sure I'm not losing my mind. Anybody else before we go down to some other stuff?
No, not me.
Bob, DeShang?
No.
I'm great, thank you.
On page 2, you want to make that same change of taking out bordering vegetated wetland.
Okay, I'm scrolling down. These are all the same standard conditions as last time. And then the erosion control as per the plan. The plan has.
Can you change that date of the plan on 13? And you probably have to do the same.
Yeah, right. I see what you mean.
Somehow I was stuck back in June.
Right. It's dated. We don't need the word through. I don't know what that is for, right?
Right.
Right.
Not the best English, but I'll put in that it's the July.
Yeah, dated revision, that's clear.
And I guess I'm gonna go back to 13 on the other one.
Well, don't do that now.
No, it's all right. I'm just going there. Fine. Do you see anything on this page here?
No. I just want to go to 30 again.
Yeah, I have more on 30 myself. Okay. So standard here. Okay, so we've got a few things. I've got 2 different things here, and then the issue of how much more we say about the vegetative cover maybe in this case. But read what I put in here so that I guess I'm curious whether Joyce had any comments on what I wrote here.
Oh, that's good, actually. That second sentence. Third sentence, I mean.
So do we want to specify what type of vegetative cover?
It's again, it's that issue of original conditions. The question is how much that covers it, or whether because they can basically have some area around the wellhead that's going to be mucked up and then cleaned up and revegetated.
So in both cases, it should be DeShang, like a conservation seed mix or a or even the wetland seed mix would work well in this situation too, but at least the conservation seed mix.
Well,
Yeah,
we can
conservation or erosion control seed mixes either will be fine. So
I'm not sure or you could say or approved equal.
Right. the important is to establish the vegetation cover around it that for the disturbed area. It's so.
So what is it that I'm putting in here for using vegetative cover using what?
A conservation seed mix.
We don't want to specify that it's a wetland, more which one?
It's upland area, so.
Well, it is an upland area, but it's got high. So you could say use a conservation seed mix.
You could say as per recommendation of the distributor, because they specify which of their wetland seed mixes are appropriate in which locations.
Right.
Based on the location and the.
So if you use the seed mix and many places prepare them, but the New England wetland plant, they have a conservation seed mix that we usually spec out, and then you say or approved equal in case they find another distributor which has a comparable.
So basically, it's a seed mix. We're gonna get rid of this. That's gonna be. I'm gonna just put a thing there. I'll come back and get rid of that. Whoops, I guess I shouldn't. It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous.
Or equivalent. Or
equivalent. But
approved equivalent.
What's that?
Approved equivalent.
Approved equivalent.
And I think you should add, as Joyce described.
I know, that's what I want to hear.
As it should be described as, what is the place called?
New England.
New England Wetland Plants.
New England Wetland Plants, Inc.
But which mix are we talking about from them?
They have a New England conservation / wildlife mix. So it's go back. It's called in front of conservation. It's called New England conservation / wildlife seed mix.
Okay. That's for the two ones in the using equivalent. Using, basically, this is just for the ones in the field. Are we saying the same thing in the one in the woods?
In the woods, probably right now, I mean, it should probably will be fine too. So
yeah, and there really isn't much cover in there, but this would, I guess, for all disturbed soil.
Okay, fine.
That would be.
Okay, how do people feel about the wording in this whole section 30 at the moment?
So can we harvest the seed right in that meadow area? Because that's more native and better probably to a degree.
Yeah, that's true, right? That could be the approved equivalent.
Right. It's not going to be a big area.
You go in there and cut off those seed heads and save them.
Yeah, it's probably better.
I want to see that, Deshang. I want to see you do all that, collect it all and dry it out.
No, Bob will do it.
Okay, should I put it?
That's his hobby. From this point, he's going to harvest
Bob
the seed.
will collect existing seeds.
Yeah, from around it, because that's so many there already.
All right.
Okay, Bob, you have any comments on this now?
No, it looks great. My only question, Michael, and it's kind of a question of just process, because I think I'm often interested in process, is the use of the mats across or comparable material across a mowed field, such as is the case here. Is that typical of your requirement of a homeowner for a single family construction in a well?
We've used it at times.
Yeah.
As you see, maybe it hasn't been there, but as you heard from Cindy's list, a lot of wells aren't in here. But for the ones that we do have, when it's whether it's soil, this is something, especially given all the wet conditions as of late and things like that.
No, it's not a big deal. I I like consistency in the.
Oh, I agree.
The
Yep.
regulations and in the conditions. And so if you do this in this situation, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had too many situations like this where you're in a field like this that's vulnerable to that kind of compaction.
Sure, yeah.
So this is a relatively unique thing there. So I'm not sure you're going to go back and find something exactly like this, but we try to deal with that kind of stuff there because we've had bad experience with people. We used to say, rake out any ruts and this and that and the other. But that compaction is really almost very hard to reverse.
Yeah, no, I
so therefore we've probably moved on from just raking out ruts and things like that.
Yeah, yep, great,
Yeah,
okay.
the only thing, this one, I think the field is really compact that Joyce and I know when we were ordering it.
Oh, well.
I mean, it's almost like in cement. You cannot compact anymore.
No, but what Michael's talking about is different than horses walking on it.
Yeah. And Bob, we try to be consistent and even-handed, but every site is different.
Of course. I understand.
Okay. Any other comments on this one?
Michael, Matt's should only have one T.
I know, I was about to ask somebody whether I looked kind of weird.
There's, unless you have guys named Matt out there, which
we can lie them down.
I'm sure they'd object.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's the kind of
what
11
else?
o'clock at night humor. Let's see, going
What
on.
else?
Is everybody happy with that thing there? I can't tell if this, I'm going to scroll down if everybody's happy with this.
I'm okay.
That's good.
If I go down, it's
So
just,
just to highlight this, for the one in the woods, everybody, Deshang, that there were no trees proposed to be removing. We were using the existing access path.
Right.
There might be some limbing, but there was no tree removal.
Right. Yeah, we identify there's no tree really need
Yeah,
cut. If we have, but we probably have some kind of a limb, a pruning, or just to that extent.
Okay.
all right, okay, it just says there's no trees removed, okay. Okay, so I don't have anything else. I move that we close the hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Jean?
Aye.
Neil, I, Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Great, the motion carries. Michael, did you make edits to the findings that I would need to read, or can I read from the old version that you had circulated? With
Oh,
some...
there, I could put it back up.
Yeah,
we need some edits. I'll just put it right back up here.
Okay. And then Jean, are you prescribing a different way for me to read this motion?
Or maybe Jean can read it.
Yeah,
No, that's not advisable.
Let's see what you got, Jean.
I'm okay with the way you do it. I'll get used to it eventually.
Look, like I said, I'm just bludgeoning my way through. You know, these little sort of finer points of process are not where my value is to be found. Okay, let's see. All right, there it is. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to make the following motion with these findings. The commission hereby finds that the work proposed to drill the proposed drinking water wells which lie, that's a tense problem, within the 100-foot buffer zone will not result in adverse impacts to adjacent wetland resource areas. The commission further finds that the applicant has presented evidence sufficient to demonstrate that the proposed activity will not cause alteration to wetland resource areas during or after construction if all conditions in the order are met. Additionally, the Sherburne Conservation Commission finds that the following conditions are necessary to protect the wetland resource area or wetland resource for the duration of the proposed project. The commission orders that all work shall be performed in accordance with said conditions and with the notice of intent referenced in the special conditions section of this order. To the extent that the following conditions modify or differ from the plan specifications or other proposals submitted with the notice of intent, the conditions shall control. I'm not going to read F, and we'll just roll right on. So I don't know when the move, whatever. Furthermore, the Sherburne Conservation Commission hereby finds that the proposed project is approved subject to the findings and conditions contained herein and edited this evening. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Jean?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Michael,
Aye.
Cindy,
Nay.
Courtney. Oh, sorry,
Aye.
Courtney. All right, the motion carries 4-1. Okay. Joyce, if you're talking, you're muted.
Michael, you're gonna make that change to live instead of live?
And which one? And
It's in the findings you say you changed well to wells, but you still have wells lies instead of wells lie. So you just have to take the S off in there.
you have to tell me which.
It's in D, finding D.
Okay, finding D.
All right.
Oh, which lie, okay.
Yes. All right. Anything else? Great. All right. Shang, Bob, thank you very much. Arthur, thank you. I don't see anybody else. Oh, Brian, thank you as well. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. Fellow commission members, what else do we have to wrangle with tonight?
We could do one more last set of minutes quickly.
No.
No.
Okay,
Please. I need a minute.
that's fine. I don't care. I'm just offering.
Thank you. All right. Let's see. Do we have something to do with Silverwood?
Just the report that, God, am I sharing my screen here and I can't get rid of it?
You're not sharing.
Oh, good. Something got weirded out on my display here, but Silverwood, there was a tremendous amount of water flowing since we had a remarkable July so far, as was reported by somebody in town who keeps track of all this. We've had 9 inches in the last few weeks compared to it's a quarter of a year's average use. So there was a lot of water flowing there. We've sent videos by neighbors. And I gave that to Silverwood, and just today or whatever, managed to set up a meeting with Jonathan to look at what they've done there and how maybe it could be adjusted for Monday at 5 o'clock. And we'll report after that and probably put it on the agenda so that it's, we have to notify Jonathan if we do that, if we have any substantive discussion.
Elizabeth, have you added the video to the file?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess you could put it under, just make sure you put it as a discussion. For now, put it as a discussion item on the next agenda. And we'll have to figure out whether we give it a time, and we'll have to notify Jonathan.
Okay. All right. Elizabeth, sorry.
I forgot one other little tidbit. There was that letter from Jonathan about issues of stormwater coming from Western Ave onto his property that's causing some of the issues.
Excuse me if I may, just a quick interruption.
Sure.
Hello?
Okay.
Go ahead, Tisha.
So because we didn't get time to read through the order, so forget to check in if there's a condition spelled it out that says that the commission find the wetland line as modified as accurate. So because that's will be tied.
It's already in there. It's in there. It's part of the standard stuff that the
right. I would assume, because we didn't get Bob just asked me. I say it should be there, but I didn't get a chance to read through, so I want to double check.
Yeah, it's part of the standard NOI work that there's always.
Okay, no, appreciate it. I just double checked it. I would think that's a standard, but I say I will check, see if you it seems I still on, so I called it. I just give him a peace of mind. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Deshaun.
Just finish up on Silverwood. That there was that letter. I reached out to Eric Johnson as the chair of the select board about that we should talk within the town with DPW and others about that issue, and to explain where we are as a conservation commission on that issue, and so that and since Eric, I reached out to him in particular because he's very well experienced in this stuff, given what he does during his day job. So that we started talking about that, and I'll have another meeting with him about the kind of stormwater issues off of Western Ave versus what we've done, and trying to bring in Sean. Done.
Okay. All right. Elizabeth, a very quick question for you. You had mentioned something about a rail trail situation over by Whitney Farm. Is that something that did not make the agenda tonight?
It did not, because it was within the 48 hours and we didn't have time to invite Sean, so we'll have it on our next agenda.
Okay, thank you. Just had that procedural question. Okay. Anything else? I see there's something on the violations. Is that?
Yeah, I should have asked Elizabeth to remove that because I have nothing new to add.
Okay. All right, so let's take that off the agenda for the next time. Okay. All right, do we have AAs just to read through?
I'll read them.
Okay.
124 Bogostobrook Road, irrigation well. 162 Western Avenue, soil testing. 59 North Main Street, deck extension. All of these proposals are outside of our jurisdiction.
Fabulous. All right, in that case, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Jean?
Aye.
Neil? Aye. Michael?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol, you can vote on this one.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.